Our exciting story begins with the question, do you know the end of this world? You only have two choices, yes or no. But we will return to this issue a little later. Now we will be brought to one ominous place where quite a lot of people had already gathered. The center of attention was the mysterious man who was sitting near the guillotine. This was an unusual man. He sat on his throne. From this we can conclude that he is the ruler. This mysterious man was holding a chamomile in his hands and plucking its petals. In a calm but at the same time serious voice, he stated that he was going to speak frankly. Now we see that this is a demon. Horns on his head and eyes glow with red light. He turned to his interlocutor and said that she had taken the first step towards prosperity. A few meters away from him, a girl was kneeling, clearly very nervous. The crowd that watched everything that was happening here was worried about the fate of this girl. Sweat was dripping from her face. She was terrified and in an uncertain voice said that she was grateful for this. At that moment, she was so tense that sweat just dripped onto the floor like rain. Then, gathering her strength, she turned to a gentleman named Dantalion and said that besides them, there were 6 more cities that decided to support the rebellion. His Majesty would need time and people to conquer them all. Then Dantalion asked if she was worried about their time. He agreed with her that military campaigns would not be cheap. And finally, she dared to look him in the eye and said that she could help. Her name is Christina, and she comes from a noble family. Her word has a certain weight in the Empire. With her influence, they can force them to lay down their arms without using force. Dantalion continues to pluck petals from the flower and said that everything is clear to him, and her words have weight. At that moment, she thought that everything was going according to plan, and a little more, and she would be able to convince him. Then she smiled and said that later she could help him negotiate. Dantalion interrupted her conversation and, tearing out the last petal on the flower, said that, in other words, she decided to sell her people. At this moment, the girl became even more tense. She began to get more and more nervous. Dantalion slowly stood up and asked if he understood everything correctly. The girl got nervous and started saying that he misunderstood her. The demonic man said that you should not bargain for your life, pray for death. You should be ready to sacrifice yourself to protect the people. At that moment, 2 huge orcs grabbed the girl by the hands. Dantalion looked at the crowd of people and asked them, "Isn't he right?" Then he defiantly turned to the townspeople, opening his arms to the sides, asking them if they had heard her. He told them that their leader, instead of their lives and the lives of their children, chose to save his own skin. Then he suggested asking them, "Is she worthy of her title in this city?" And also whether she is worthy of this world. People raised their hands up the mountain and shouted that she was unworthy. Dantalion shouted that he could not leave it as it was, because something like this was unforgivable. This demon shouted that he would confront this selfish woman who thinks only about herself, and not only her. People listened to him attentively. Some of the crowd even began to shed tears from their eyes. He talked about how he would confront a world filled with such people. He shouted that they could fight with him, and they would destroy this rotten world. After this epic performance, people began chanting the demon's name. The huge orcs who grabbed the girl began to lead her to the guillotine. She was very scared at that moment and understood that now her life would end. Tears began to flow from her eyes. She begged not to be killed, but nothing can save her. Her head was cut off. People chanted and shouted in support of the demon. Now we learn that there are 72 demon kings who rule the world. Dantalion, who stepped on the flower he threw to the ground, won 71st place. Dantalion is a lesser demon king. This is the beginning of a battle of wits. The following events take place in a different place. It was the Dark Dungeon. Dantalion was in this dungeon and he did not feel very well. Looking around, he didn't understand why all this was happening to him. What to do, what happened? We need to go to one more place. This man with black hair always hated his father. He always wished him dead, and today his father finally passed away. And the cause of his death was a heart attack, a very sad end. But during his lifetime, he was a criminal. He was very often captured by the police for his crimes. He was also a womanizer, loved to go out and spend money on women. Despite all this, he was very greedy for money. He probably loved money more than anything in the world. He was a dirty stain on his son's life, and his death was the best thing he ever did for him. After his father's death, his son immediately began cleaning the house. He thought that perhaps he already guessed that he did not have long to live. Still, the son tried to throw away all these thoughts about his dead father because no one cared. I poured myself some coffee and thought that besides, none of this matters. Today is a bright sunny day. The sun is shining very pleasantly outside the window. Office workers go to their jobs to earn their pennies. Our hero watches this while drinking coffee and tries not to think about anything. And finally, after a very long time, he smiled and shouted that long live the new life. Who would have known that his vile father hid his financial assets from everyone? And even at home in the basement, there are 500 million. The young man lay down on the bed and thought that it was true that his father had helped him. With that kind of money, he can get whatever his heart desires. He immediately thought that he wanted to buy himself a house and a car. Well, naturally, girls, a lot of girls. Is it worth wanting so much? But as it turned out, he didn't need any of this at all. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door and the man immediately jumped up from the sofa and shouted that he was coming. There was a courier standing there who wanted to tell that man to sign, but he jumped out of the door, quickly signed, and ran back into the house. The courier didn't even have time to understand anything, and the young man quickly jumped onto the bed. Thinking that he had the opportunity to buy whatever he wanted, he decided to remodel his bedroom, and it cost 30 million yen. He has 3 vows: no work, no friends, no wedding. Work is like a thorn in a thorn, and forgive me if he doesn't want to get involved with it. As for friends, maximum work colleagues with whom he went to a barbecue, and this eternal internal squabble with everyone already infuriates him. And the wedding. The other half with whom you vow to be together until your death. His vile, clueless dad has married 12 times in his entire life, and it makes his son sick. But his son is not going to follow the same path as his father. He will sit at home under a blanket and play games. This is the ultimate of his dreams, a real paradise. And he immediately loaded his games and decided to go through them to the maximum. 2 months have passed since then. He finished playing Dungeon Attack. This took him longer than he expected. During all this time, his house was an incredible mess. Then he wanted to see what else he had there and choose some next game. He wanted to try VR glasses. Suddenly, a pop-up window appeared on his plasma. It was written there that he had one unread message. The man did not understand what other messages he could receive. He blocked his friend list so that no one could write to him. He thought that this was some kind of message from the developers of that game. It was written that they thanked him for completing this game, and they were glad that he was able to complete it to the end. The man thought that this was a common act of politeness. The developers were also office employees. They were probably assigned the task of players. Well, thanks for trying. Then the following window appeared where it was written that in this regard, would he like to go through their questions? Our hero was not very interested when there, but he had a lot of time. The first question was, which girls does he prefer? Pretty ones or more mature ones? The young man asked himself in surprise, what kind of question is this? And then he began to choose what he liked best. Another question came up there, does he like being drunk or does he like beating people? There were some very strange questions here. He did not expect to see them. And then there were many more questions about what he likes. The simpler the better, the more complex. The more interesting, solve all questions with brute force, or solve them with the mind, keep other people's secrets, or use other people's secrets. Friendship is when they strive for the same goal, or is friendship selfless? The man thought that he had a bad feeling. And when will this all end? And it would seem that the last question was whether he knew the end of this world. I looked in surprise at what was written there and didn't even know what to answer. I thought that he had already cleared everything out. He even sometimes chose answers at random. And again, a new question came up where it was written, does he want to change the Exodus? He understood that this was no longer funny, but what the hell is this? And only now he realized that maybe this was a fake invitation from scammers. They want to extract all the money from him after this question. What fools? He shouted that he couldn't be fooled so easily. It's good that he didn't have time to press that button. But he had to do it. It was already destined. He saw a cockroach and screamed loudly. I tried to kill this cockroach and accidentally pressed the joystick. At the same time, when asked whether he wanted to change the outcome, he chose the answer yes. Immediately after this, a bright light illuminated him, and he stopped seeing anything for a moment. And then he completely disappeared from the room in which he was. This time he was transported not into a game, as often happens, but into a completely different world with a complete lack of understanding of what happened here. He looked at his hands and noticed that they were not his hands at all, and he also felt some kind of pain. Looking around, he was very shocked by what was happening. The young man fell to his knees. Someone turned to him and told him to move and finally tell him where the treasure was. Or does he want them to break his head in two? Now we see that that man had become the Demon King, but now he was in a bad situation. From that moment, his terrible new life began in another world. The guys who talked to him were clearly aggressive against him. He tried to get to his feet, but nothing worked. His legs were broken. Now there were a lot of questions in his head. What treasures are they talking about? Why do they call him the Demon King? What are they even talking about? Besides, what kind of place is this? He was just at his home. There was blood coming from his mouth. He was all wounded, and it was very difficult for him at that moment. The man was trying to remember what happened. He was at home sitting on his couch, and suddenly something happened, but he couldn't remember. But now it doesn't matter. First, you need to understand this situation. For some reason, all this time he had the thought in his head that his father died not so long ago. Your whole body aches in pain, you can't run far with such legs. He was already thinking that with such prospects it looked like they would kill him here, but he tried to collect his thoughts. He needed to calm down and think. Never in his life had he strained his head so hard to come up with at least some kind of plan. Suddenly, he told those guys who were trying to harm him to wait. He thought that maybe he could find out information from them. He asked which demon king they were talking about. One of those guys approached our hero and grabbed him by the horn on his head. And then he approached him even closer and asked, "Has he finally lost his mind?" This blue-eyed man said that he was not the demon king Dantalian. He was some kind of horned wretch. Suddenly he remembered the survey that appeared on his TV. He began to understand that that survey was not just like that. It was the tricks of the devil. But now he felt like a hero who went on an adventure to defeat the demon kings. It seems he was cursed. He heard something like that once. Well, in a past life I played all sorts of games. Are all these games also from the devil who can transport you to his world? But in this world he feels very weak. And besides, he was just beaten and his legs were broken. And finally, he thought that now he is very similar to the weakest opponent whom the main character defeats at the beginning of his journey. He remembered that he was playing through a game that was very similar to the situation where he found himself now. When he completed it, these stupid polls appeared. And here he is, which means everything is correct. He is the weakest demon king Dantalian. And he still couldn't believe that this was possible, although it explained a lot. After all these rapid thoughts, he thought that if everything is as he thinks, then he should definitely be killed now. The man who was holding him by the horn got angry that he was silent for so long and hit him in the face. He hit him with such force that our hero flew several meters back and fell headfirst into the ground. Another wound, how everything hurts, he just feels like a slug. He understood that at this rate they would really kill him, and he would not be able to do anything. And in fact, the guys were very serious. They just wanted to kill this demon. They pounced on him and began to beat him with the most perverted methods. Our hero thought that they must be mocking him. Is this really the last curse from his father? After all, only recently he decided that he could live in peace and comfort. And now he found himself in such a situation. Now he felt that he was losing consciousness. When he lost consciousness, absolutely everything disappeared. Suddenly he saw something among this nothingness. You looked at him and noticed a man sitting at the table. Is this really his vile father? He looked at him and saw that same girl, not understanding why his father was smiling. I thought that it was all his father's fault. He suffered so much because of him. If you think like that, then something like this has already happened. A long time ago, he was kidnapped by a man who had a bad relationship with his vile father. This was already the third kidnapping when the man who stole the guy looked at our hero and thought, why is he so calm? And the boy was actually absolutely calm. We were just unhappy that he had to endure all this. Then he was so tired of everything that he sat quietly and did not worry about anything. Well, then, he didn't know what would happen next. He thought that, as always, they would try to ransom him. The man tied the boy, tying him to a chair, and took out a gun, pointed the gun at the guy's head and told him to listen carefully. This is not a toy, let him just squeak and he will kill him. Then he decided to bet his whole life on this. He thought that he could free himself from his father and told his visitor that he understood everything, and please let him shoot him. If the gun is real, then he won. The kidnapper shouted, "What is this fool talking about?" The boy grabbed the pistol that was in the hands of the kidnapper and put it to his forehead, telling him to fire a shot. If the pistol was fake, then he lost. From that moment on, the life stained by the sins of his father could finally end. The kidnapper was very scared of what this boy was doing. As a result, the kidnapper himself surrendered, and the boy thought that he had lost. But in the end, he realized something. In the end, the one with the stronger will survives. So it was, he had already forgotten everything about it. And now he is being beaten in this dungeon. The armed guys turned to the demon and told him to tell him where the treasure is. This is his last chance. One of those guys walked up to the half-dead demon and stepped on it with his foot. It is unclear whether, fortunately or unfortunately, he was not yet dead at that moment. Dantalian smiled. Some wild thought entered his head. He realized that he felt the same hopelessness as when he was a boy. He felt the same feeling as if he was going to die. He no longer cared about everything that was happening, and he decided that now he would do whatever he wanted. Dantalian began to rise. The man who stepped on him said that it looks like this demon wants to drag the treasures with him to hell. Then he said that his patience was over and called one big guy with a huge weapon to him. That big bald guy asked if he was sure that this needed to be done, but he still didn't admit it. The blond man said that he didn't care. They would find those treasures themselves. We need to finish this fool off now. The bald man with a huge hammer swung to end this once and for all. He was about to kill the demon, but suddenly he raised his hand and shouted that he agreed. The bald man stopped abruptly. He managed to react and did not kill the demon. The blond man who was about to look at the bloody mess was perplexed at what happened. The demon began to rise to his feet with a groan. He was about to say something. He said he would do anything, and finally he stood up on his feet and his eyes glowed red. He will do anything to survive. His face changed, and he became completely different. He got rid of the curse that was his father, and finally became free. More precisely, he thought so. But everything did not go as desired, as happens in life. Suddenly, he was drawn into a completely new world. He did not even suspect that this was possible. And the worst thing is that he woke up in the body of the weakest demon king. And in front of him stood a group of adventurers who were only interested in money. The situation could not have been worse. They would have killed him a little more and that would have been the end of the story. But he is no longer the same boy he once was. He barely had time to taste freedom. At that moment when he rose to his feet, which by the way were broken, he said that he would show them. He would show them where the treasure was, and he was going to survive at any cost. Those men who were there began to laugh loudly. Did he finally understand? They themselves were thinking that they would get theirs and then blow off this demon's head. Dantalion had no idea where these treasures were. He understood that even if he guessed right, they would immediately kill him without blinking an eye. Dantalion understood that he needed to somehow talk his teeth into them so that he would have time. After he got up, he immediately got down on his knee and said that he was admitting defeat. And then he said that the treasure is in the chambers of the Demon King. However, they are hidden behind a secret magical door that is not so easy to open. And the only one who can remove the spell from this door is Dantalion. He decided to act with cunning, hoping that he would still have some chance to survive. Suddenly, the steel of a sword flashed in front of him with lightning speed. Right in front of him, the same blond man stabbed his sword into the ground. And then he turned to the King of Demons and told him to listen to him carefully. If he collected them, then he is dead. Dantalion told his interlocutor that he understood everything. When he said this, those guys were happy and decided that the treasures lay in the chambers of the Demon King. It seemed to them that they would finally achieve their goal and be able to get what they wanted. Dantalion still knelt and watched them rejoice and thought that he had one less problem. But when the real battle begins, we'll have to come up with something new. But he understood that they would not kill him right now. He had time until they got there. Therefore, you need to quickly figure out what to do next in this situation. The adventurers walked forward and were impatient to quickly come to the place where the treasure was located, but since our hero had broken legs, he could not walk quickly, and they did not urge him on in any way. The blond man screamed. Is he really trying to delay time? Did he want to die? Dantalion walked and thought that at this rate he would die in any case. He thought that until they finished him off, he had to find a way to kill them. But how can he do this? There are 10 of them here. Not all of them are armed. And he looked around and thought that he might be able to take advantage of something. But after all, this is the demon's castle. Are there really not a single monster left here? And again, the man with blonde hair turned to our hero and told him to move faster. All this time he was thinking that as soon as the treasures were in his hands, the demon would be finished. Dantalion looked at his feet and saw that there were remains of monsters all around. Judging by the appearance, they had been lying here for a long time. What should I do? Apparently, they will have to rely only on their own strength. How much longer do they have to go before resting in the Demon King? Well, then he remembered that after all, he is an unusual person. He has an advantage. He is, after all, a demon of demons who have superhuman abilities that help them defeat their enemies. And if he really is now in the body of a demon, then this should work. But he still didn't understand what powers he had. But as often happens in Chinese culture, when you get into another body after death, you have a system. And our hero is no exception. It turned out that he also has a system with which he can track some details. And the first skill that he learned that he could obtain was the Eye of God. This skill allows you to see your location and the location of opponents, as well as traps and objects. This is a high-class skill that can only be obtained by defeating a sufficiently strong enemy. But thanks to the fact that he has a system, he was able to find a loophole thanks to which he can use this skill in only one place. The system made him understand that this skill can be applied in the dungeon itself, where you can learn the intricacies of battle, and this place is Dantalion Castle. This is a great opportunity to get some kind of advantage. It could really help him. The system gave him some details about his current situation. And the situation was no better. He was in a cave and there were no special effects here. He also does not have an army, and there are no inhabitants in this cave either. The sudden system also explained to him that the number of troops in the castle is 0. The level of danger is high, and the system asks him to hire troops as soon as possible. Dantalian at the moment seemed to be transported to some other universe while he studied the system. The system offered him the Hades contract and asked what kind of monster he wanted to hire. Dantalian was glad that the Demon King had the skill of summoning monsters, but his system was also limited by the number of certain points that he needed to earn. These points were called Libras, and there were only 100 of them. Dantalian was thinking about what was this damn Demon King doing here? There are 10 opponents, but he can only hire 8 goblins. They won't be able to survive in battle for long. Summoning golems and catching them by surprise. This is also not the best option. There is no guarantee that the golems will also be able to withstand those guys. But time is running out. There is very little time left by the time they approach the chambers. He felt a little calmer because he understood that he was not here alone. The system could still help. And finally, an idea came to her head. There is a 60% chance of success, but this is too low to risk her life. But there is no time to think about this situation for a long time. You need to act. Still, he has to take a risk. He clenched his fist and looked at the enemy he wanted to kill the most. He thought that he was ready, and suddenly began to glow with a purple glow. For everything to work out, you need to gain their trust and then you can act. Dantalian thought that first he needed to find out more about them. The system also gave him another skill called Aphrodite's Apostle. He was able to scan those guys and noticed on such heads some signs with their names and some information about them. Some had a current state such that they were thinking about what a horror, why are they taking so long, and others had a state of would like to finish the job quickly and go home and eat my mother's stew. Apostle of Aphrodite is a skill that allows you to see the characteristics of opponents. With such information, you can more easily navigate who you are dealing with and what tactics to choose. Now he sees that a man named Luf, this very fair-haired man, is an adventurer. He was the leader of this group and thought that they would get treasures. But this was too little, and they would not stop until they got even more. Lufu looked again at the Demon King who was walking behind. He shouted at him to move his legs quickly, otherwise he would be killed right there. Dantalian said that he was going as fast as he could, he was still injured, and then asked for forgiveness. Dantalian understood that the time had come to make his first move. With the help of the system, he found a way to destroy them, but he will have to try. And the first thing you need to do is to relax them a little so that they lose their vigilance. Aphrodite's Apostle is one of the high-ranking skills that is only available in this dungeon. With its help, you can see the characteristics of other people or other races that are usually hidden from view. Dantalian now has all the information he needs, but how can he play his cards? The key to success is to get their boss to trust Dantalian more. He understood that he would have to take a risk, but the game was worth the candle. Well, those guys were already a little relaxed. They had just beaten the Demon King, and therefore they had inflated self-confidence. After some time, they were almost approaching the Demon King's chambers. Dantalian looked around. It was quite interesting here, but it was time to take the first step. He turned to the guys and told them to stop. People immediately stopped and looked in surprise at the Demon King who had been silent all this time. The blonde man turned to the Demon King and asked why he was taking up his time. Dantalian apologized for interrupting them, but there was a trap set in that passage. The blonde man asked what he was talking about and was it true. Dantalian said that after a couple of meters, the hidden device will release about a dozen arrows. Injuries definitely cannot be avoided, so he will go first. And with his body, he is going to disarm the trap. All this was done in order to ingratiate himself with trust. Luf asked, why would they take his word for it? He is a demon after all. One of the guys in that group told his boss that, judging by the map, the passage will only narrow further. Besides, it's so dark there that the devil could break his leg, it's dangerous. Luf shouted to the Demon King walking forward and told him to stop. He thought that the demon was trying to escape from them and therefore went forward. Dantalian in a calm voice told them not to worry. He himself understands that with such legs he won't be able to run far. He just wants to show them a sign of respect. He said that they were no different from other adventurers who came here, because they did not try to kill him right away. If they don't trust him, they can follow him. But he doesn't guarantee security either. Luf was very angry, he was now at a loss. Then he said that he didn't care about it. And then he told his guys to quickly run after the demon. But the guys from his team said that they needed to wait, because they almost fell into a trap at the entrance. When they entered this dungeon, huge stone blocks fell right on them. Luf shouted that they should be men and not snotty fools. Meanwhile, while they were thinking there, Dantalian sank deeper and deeper into the cave. He could barely hear the screams of those guys, and thought about whether he had gone far enough. Well, in any case, everything is fine now, and everything is going according to plan, and he took 2 arrows with him. These were the arrows that he picked up from those corpses that were lying around here. He managed to sneak them in unnoticed, and they will be very useful to him now. Now is the time to put those arrows to work, but it seems his plan was crazy. He braced himself and clenched his teeth. He was preparing for something very unpleasant. Then he told himself that he could handle it and raised the arrow up and swung it. Then our hero stuck this arrow into himself and then screamed very loudly. The guys who were there tensed up from this scream. They even became scared. Luff asked the Demon King what was going on there. Let him show himself. Dantalian shouted that it was too early for them to move on, even if they weren't coming yet. The assistants asked their boss what they should do in this situation. Luff said that everyone should be ready, and whoever asks, he himself will kill with his sword. The guys were very tense. They didn't understand that it was very dangerous here, and besides, their boss was crazy. They went forward lighting torches. Luff shouted, "Where is Dantalian?" As they walked deeper and deeper, they noticed blood, and there were traces of that pool of blood. The guys immediately decided to follow these tracks and moved forward. After some time, they finally reached the place where Dantalian stopped, with an arrow sticking out of his leg. He lay there and broke down in pain. And the guys were very surprised that he really sacrificed himself. Dantalian slowly opened his eyes and said that he seemed to have lost consciousness. Luff told Dantalian to explain to him what happened here. What about that trap? Dantalian replied that they can be calm. The traps have already been neutralized. The guys looked at each other in surprise. These words even made them feel a little better. Luff approached the Demon King and asked why the hell he saved them. He could have remained silent about this trap. Dantalian put his hand to his heart and said that they were different from other adventurers. As he had already said, they gave him a chance to survive. So he was impressed by this act, and that's the whole reason. Of course he was careless and got an arrow in the leg, but that won't be a problem. He pulled the arrow out of his leg, which was dripping blood, and said that it was time for them to move on. Luff didn't understand whether this demon was serious now or not. Dantalian just silently looked at his interlocutor. With the help of the system, he noticed that Luff really became more disposed towards him. And when the boss sympathizes with someone, his team also trusts more the one whom the boss trusts. He thought that this was great. This was exactly what he needed. They began to sympathize with him. This is not enough for us. He needs more. This was just the first stage. It's time to move on. And then, he decided to move on to the second stage. Moreover, the system made him understand that his charm skill was better. Luff thought that this was some very strange guy. Well, maybe he would be useful. With such a wound, he will still only slow everyone down. It seems he will have to help. He turned to the 2 guys and told them to help the Demon King go. One of those guys immediately came over and helped the Demon King by holding him up. Dantalian hesitantly thanked those guys. They laughed loudly and asked why he was surprised. After all, he was the first to help them, and let him consider that this is a reciprocal favor. And now is the time to move on. We need to speed up. Dantalian thought that everything was going great. Everything was going as it should. It won't be easy to get along with their boss, but it won't be enough. He understood that he needed to gain their trust even more. Now the second stage begins. Finally, they arrived at their destination, which was the entrance to Dantalian Castle. Luff said that this was a good door. He thought that it would be smaller. Then they slowly opened those huge gates and began to look around to see what was there. Luff looked around with joy and thought that they had finally gotten here. He turned to the Demon King and told His Majesty to get the treasure. But suddenly they noticed that tears were flowing from the demon's eyes. This turn of events surprised them very much. They did not understand what was happening. The man who supported him and helped him walk asked why he was crying and what happened. Dantalian said that he could not restrain himself. This place reminds him of his comrade, or rather his family. Luff asked, "Do Demon Kings have families too?" Dantalian sobbed louder and louder and then said that of course he had a family. But that was a long time ago. Even he had a beloved family. There were people whom he considered his family. But it happened that they all died. This castle was inhabited by many different creatures. Different races could live here without fear of anything. But one day they came. A whole army of cruel warriors who destroyed everyone here. Dantalian was trying to escape at that time, running for his life and quickly running away. The armed knights aimed their arrows at him and are damn ready to kill him. Dantalian understood that he could no longer hide and would not have time to dodge. But he was covered by one of his assistants. It was a huge orc who turned to Mr. Dantalian and asked if he was safe. The entire back of this huge orc was pierced through and through by arrows. The orc understood that he could no longer survive. and told his master to save himself, and he himself would deal with them. Dantalian then tried to stop him and asked what he was talking about. He couldn't leave him. Suddenly there was another volley of arrows which again pierced the orc's back. The green and muscular warrior turned to his master and said that he would be fine. He told Dantalian to quickly leave here. The orc was already on the verge of death. Dantalian felt pain inside himself. He was very sorry to lose such a member of his family. He began to walk, trying to hide, and the orc, who understood that he was already finished, turned around to fight the whole army alone. They all sacrificed their lives to save him that day. He told it all so captivatingly that those guys also began to feel sad and thought that they felt sorry for him. One of the guys said that he thought the demon kings were terrible, but it turns out they also have feelings. This demon mourns his comrades. This man told everyone else that he thought Dantalian was a good demon. At the same time, Dantalian, using the system, noticed that a man named Jack felt even more sympathy for him. And also the other guys who were here also began to sympathize with him more from such a story. Luf remained silent and then said that the story of this demon was different from what he had heard before. This girl said that the demon king is a heartless bastard. And again a system appeared that showed that Luf also felt even greater sympathy where, then he thought that what difference does it make to him? He is more interested in whether he can benefit from this? Dantalian stopped crying and turned to the guys and then said that he was grateful that they brought him here. He looked at them with a mysterious look and said that he was right after all. He was not mistaken. After all, they are not like those adventurers who killed his family. He also said that he believes that even the souls of the dead were able to rest in peace after seeing their nobility, and therefore his life and the treasures of this castle now belong to them. They walked a little further and finally reached the throne where the demon king usually sat. He said that as they were promised, let them allow him to give them the treasures of this castle. Luf smiled and said, "Where are these treasures?" Dantalian said that as he already said, the treasures are hidden with the help of magic. And now he is going to remove the spell to gain access to these treasures, but now he asks them to move back a little. The head of the adventurers turned to the guys and told them to quickly do as the demon said. And finally they moved quite far away and that was enough. Dantalian said that it was a hard journey but they did a great job. He thought that everything was going according to plan. He would deal with them a little more. And so it's time to add the final touches. Everything is clear with the statistics, but the treasure was never here. After all, by the time our hero was reborn, Dantalian only had 100 libras left. However, this is enough to fool them. That's all he needs. The system offered him that he could exchange 1 libra for 10 silver coins. The system also informed him that, according to the laws of the system, all written-off items appear in front of him. He decided to take advantage of this and write off 76 libras to exchange them for silver coins. Dantalian began to demonstratively talk about the fact that he is the 71st Demon King and the ruler of these Dantalian lands. In his own name, he gives them these treasures as a brave hero. He raised his hand up and everyone froze in anticipation of what would happen next. Suddenly, out of nowhere, silver coins began to fall. As if from an unknown portal, these coins fell like rain. People were very surprised, they did not believe their eyes and that this could really be true. The blonde head of these guys began to laugh loudly. Is this not a dream? A lot of coins just started pouring out of nowhere. It's great. People thought that they had succeeded. They immediately fell to the ground and began to quickly collect those coins. A man with blonde hair and a green vest was happy and thought that finally they had the money in their hands. He started laughing as if he was going crazy, but it seemed good. Adventurer Luff's sympathy level has increased by another 50 points. And then he shouted that they should share all the treasures equally if they understood him, then let them collect everything alive to the last coin. Now Luff was sure that this Demon King would still be useful to them, and killing him now would be stupid. While everyone was busy collecting coins, Dantalian turned to them and said that he wanted to tell them something else. Luff. Ask him, does he really want to give them something else? Let him wait. After all, they are busy right now. Dantalian saw signs above their heads where, according to statistics, it was noted how much those guys began to trust him. Dantalian said that he apologizes for distracting them, but there is a conversation that cannot be postponed. After all, 30 more adventurers had just entered the dungeon. Luff and his team tensed at that moment, thinking that those guys outnumbered them. Dantalian said that he used magic to detect outsiders, but did not expect such a result. And then the guys fell into despair. They thought that they couldn't win because there were only 10 of them. Luff began to think that there were too few of them. 30 people was too many, and it was impossible to cope with such a number. Luff turned to the Demon King and said that there must be another way out of this castle, right? Dantalian looked down and said that no, there is only one way out. The guys started to get nervous and thought that they were trapped. Is it really going to happen like this? One of them said that they could not put up against 30 adventurers, they would be overwhelmed by numbers, what should they do now? The guys began to despair, and their leader was thinking about what to do in this situation. Dantalian turned to the captain and said that he had an idea. If they can't escape, then all they have to do is meet them face to face. Luffy looked at his interlocutor in surprise and asked him what he meant. Dantalian. Ask him if they have a map, then the man answered him that they have a map. Dantalian replied that unfortunately he could not predict which route they would take, but still, he can become bait for those guys to go after them. Luffy already trusted the Demon King because he saved them from the trap and gave them a lot of money. Dantalian said that judging by their number, this is a military detachment, which means they probably also use magic. If this is so, then the first thing they will do is follow his magical trail. From these chambers there are 3 paths to the exit outside. Dantalian suggested that he would go along one path and the guys would go differently, and then they would be able to hide. People thought that he was really ready to sacrifice himself for them again. Luffy doubted and said if the demon was going to run away now, maybe there was no one there. Dantalian said that his interlocutor was mistaken. Of course, he just wanted to give him a helping hand. He began to walk forward and said that now he did not have time to try to convince them. He came very close to that blonde man and walked past him. Then he said that everything was clear to him and they would do as the Demon King said. But don't tell those guys about the bait plan, otherwise the guys will get angry. Then Luffy turned to his assistants and told them not to panic. They need to grab the treasures and get out of here. Dantalian thought that he was grateful to Captain Luffy. He had no doubt that he would believe him too. Very quickly, your guys collected the coins in bags and were ready to leave. After that, Luffy said that they would divide into this group and move along different paths to the exit. His subordinates asked their boss what he was up to. Let him explain. After all, they don't understand anything. The boss told them to shut up and listen, and then showed them a map of the dungeon. He showed that from here to the exit there are 3 paths. Those who got here are not fools. They will take the safest path they took. 30 people is already some kind of combat unit, so it won't be possible to fight with them. So all they can do is increase their chances of survival. The boss said those things that his subordinates did not want to listen to. He said that if you are lucky, everyone will remain alive. By dividing up, they will increase the chances of salvation. Someone will definitely be able to get out of here. And besides, he said that for now all the treasures would be with him. Then the guys got angry. They thought it was dishonest, so how do you even understand this? Luffy told them to calm down. He told me that he was taking these treasures for good. But the second squad will get the Demon King. Dantalian was silent at this time. Therefore, they are lucky. If they survive, they will receive a reward. Not only that, but they will also become real heroes after everything is over. The man threw the bag of money over his shoulder and said that he assured them it was worth it. The boss walked forward. The guys looked at him excitedly and wanted to say something, but he told them to shut their mouths. And then he told them to pull themselves together, or do they want to die like dogs? Then he began to say what will happen to their families. Aren't they the last cowards? If they want to prove that they are real men, then they need to fight for their lives. Such a speech motivated the guys and they went forward. But their boss thought that they were stupid. As soon as he put a little pressure on them, they immediately fell for it. He smiled and thought that at first he thought that they would really end. As it turned out, at the moment when the demon approached Luffy, he told him in a whisper that they could send several people with him so that he would definitely not run away, and come up with a reason. How to take all the treasures yourself, one way or another, Luffy will win. After all, he said the truth that some of their comrades would die with him, and the share of the treasure would become greater. If he lied, then they simply will not allow him to escape. In any case, they will not lose anything. Luffy thought that this demon was truly a professional in his field. He smiled and said that he was right. If his team dies, the loss is small. The main thing is to get out of here yourself. Dantalian. About the fact that he already knows what this cretin is thinking about. Then he looked at his map and noticed that those guys were already quite far from him. So it's time to move on and fulfill your plan. He called the contract and looked carefully at which of those monsters he should choose. After all, he was going to finish off those guys by summoning several demons. Suddenly, an earthquake started. The guys were shocked. They didn't understand what was happening. They were all very frightened and in bewilderment asked the demon what was happening here. A pentagram began to appear right in front of them, from which a strong wind was blowing. There was also a lot of dust. Their torches were extinguished. The guys closed their eyes. The man who helped the Demon King walk on his feet asked him what was going on here. But suddenly the Demon King grabbed his face so that he could not speak. Dantalian told him that he advised him to remain silent and not make any sounds or it would get worse, with whom he grabbed the blade that the man had on his belt. Dantalian thanked him and said that he was his debtor. The man understood that he was about to be killed. Dantalian swung that blade and simply destroyed his former assistant. Everyone was fascinated by what was happening there with that pentagram. They looked at this in surprise and did not understand what to expect next. Some kind of chaos was happening here. The guys were scared. They were afraid to look away from this thing. And finally, they noticed that a huge stone golem appeared right in front of them. This golem screamed loudly and rushed at the guys with a fighting growl. People who saw this didn't understand what the hell this was. The golem began to approach them, and the cave began to collapse from its movement. The guys understood that they needed to run, and the sooner the better, they panicked. The golem hit someone hard. A lot of dust rose in the air. One of the guys cleared his throat and looked around. When he looked at one of his comrades, he saw that all that was left of him was one hand and a pool of blood that had been crushed by the golem. And the golem grabbed another person with its huge stone hand. The man did not want to leave his comrade in trouble and rushed at the golem with his sword. He jumped up and hit the golem very hard, but his sword broke. You understand that he will not be able to resist him. He could only stand in horror and shake. Without thinking for a long time, the golem raised its huge hand and killed that guy. He did this in front of another man, who watched in horror as his comrades were torn to pieces. He began to breathe heavily. An incredible panic came over him. He could not move. Suddenly he felt that someone was standing behind him. Looking around, he realized that it was the Demon King. He asked him if he knew who it was, and said that they needed to be saved. But that was the last thing he could say. Dantalian quickly pierced him with his new blade. This man didn't understand why this happened. He thought that he was already friends with the Demon King. But demons cannot be trusted. They try in every possible way to betray someone, kill them, or drag them into hell to eternal torment along with them. He said that this is all because he is the real Demon King. Another group of guys walked around. I looked around, not understanding what kind of shaking it was. Their boss thought that it looked like the second group had encountered that detachment. If this was so, then the demons didn't lie to him. At first he thought that it was great that they helped him, and then he noticed the Demon King in front of him. Luf looked at him in surprise and asked, "What is he doing here?" The Demon King stood in front of him silently and looked into his eyes. Luf said that he understood everything. It looks like they succeeded in this. Where are the others then? Dantalian threw away his cloak, which hid a bloody blade. He said that the people that leader sent with him were all dead. Luf started to look panicked and then asked why Dantalian was here then? If this is a joke, then it's not funny to him at all. Dantalian said that he probably already understood everything, but he doesn't want to admit reality. And then he said that his guess was correct. It was Dantalian who killed them all. Luf got even more angry. He asked what the demon was saying. Let him repeat it again. Dantalian tells them that these gentlemen who came here are all complete idiots. They should have seen their look before death, which was full of trust in Dantalian. Luf said that this bastard deceived everyone. He used them. And our hero noticed how their trust had dropped to zero. Dantalian smiled and said how lucky he was that they turned out to be stupid monkeys. He was very grateful to them for that. He shouted that, did they really think that the Demon King could side with the people? Dantalian said all these things on purpose. He needed them all to be overcome with rage. Luf shouted that the Demon King was a bastard. Immediately after that, all the others rushed straight to meet Dantalian. They were going to kill him. But Dantalian stood still and did not move. And as soon as they almost approached him, the red eyes of the golem shone from the dark cave. This golem rushed at those guys and knocked them all down with a powerful blow. He grabbed one of them with his huge stone hand and then hit him against the wall. Then he looked at the others and rushed towards them to destroy them too. The guys were shocked. They had never seen anything like this. Golem crushed them after another. The boss looked at all this and understood that it would be difficult. But suddenly he noticed that one of his guys, the same one with a huge hammer, attacked the golem. And with one powerful blow to the head, he crushed the golem into pieces. He laughed and told his boss that he had succeeded. But Luf was still in a state of shock and failed to react and tell his assistant to look. After all, behind was Dantalian, who pierced that bald man with his blade. Dantalian turned to Luf and said thank you again. He helped him a lot. But suddenly the golem began to recover again. It turns out that it is not so easy to kill. Dantalian said that it is enough to simply kill the golem. It is enough to simply destroy the core. At least an experienced adventurer who knows a little about golems can easily deal with him. In other words, there is no need to fall for such a cheap provocation and think with your head instead of your muscles. If they had taken advantage of this, would I have been able to defeat him? But now the situation has changed. Dantalian asked what this boss will do now. Luff was shocked by what happened, thinking about why this demon has changed so much. After all, in front of him now is not the one whom they kicked, now in front of him is the real Dantalian. But still, this fair-haired man was not going to give up too soon. He was not going to die in this place. He definitely wanted to survive, and he did not get out of such troubles. And this time, too, he can get out of it at any cost, and then he turned to the Demon King. He threw away his weapon and said that again he had to admit it, but he accepted defeat. Then he fell to his knees and said that he was giving up. Then he said that he would let the demons kill him. Dantalian held the bloody sword in his hands and said that if this is really true, then this is exactly what he will do. And then he began to slowly approach his opponent to kill him. Luff bowed his head, but now he was not going to give up after all. It was part of his plan. He thought that this fool had been caught, if only he would come closer. Who is he anyway to try to kill Luff? As it turned out, this was not his only weapon. He thought that today this Demon King would die and not him. He hid the blade behind his back. Dantalian, meanwhile, again summoned Hades' contract to hire a new monster. Dantalian was getting closer and closer, and the man was thinking that a little more and he would be able to get out of here. He already tried to take out the dagger and kill him, but our hero could read thoughts using the system. But after a while, Dantalian suddenly stopped, and his opponent became nervous. Dantalian addressed Luff while he stood at a distance. Our hero told his opponent that his opponent had it all written all over his face. Dantalian laughed loudly and said that this time he really was finished. Dantalian was furious. He understood that the demon seemed to be able to read minds, but this was nonsense. This would not happen. He jumped up from his seat and shouted that he would not lose, while he decided to hold his blade in his hands. He runs towards our hero very quickly in order to pierce him and tear out his intestines. But suddenly he lost his balance and began to fall headfirst to the ground. I looked at him and noticed there was some kind of mucus on his leg. Where the hell did this creature come from? They were here all the time. Why didn't they see it? And then Dantalian took another step forward. Luff tried to jump up to kill the enemy. But he didn't expect that. On the other side, a golem approached him and grabbed his hand. Luff understood that he could not cope with the golem. He screamed very loudly. Dantalian thought that everything had worked out exactly according to plan. Meanwhile, his opponent was screaming loudly in pain. Our hero thought that it was good that he left a few points for the slime. I can't even believe that everything went so smoothly. Then he said to his opponent, "How does he feel when someone who was considered a weakling crushes you into powder?" The Demon King looked at his opponent and asked him what it would be like to experience such a death. Luff, meanwhile, was thinking about when and where did he make a mistake? Did this really happen at the moment when he decided to postpone killing him? Or was it a mistake that he took the castle card from that woman? But probably the most important thing is that the challenge thrown to Dantalian was a mistake. And now he realized that no one should have gone against him. He is the king of demons. After this murder, our hero found himself again in some completely different space. I don't understand where he is. There was a lot of white smoke there, and he saw his father who told him that his son should be ready. Dantalian did not understand what was happening. Again, his father appeared in front of him. What did he want? Let him go to the next world. But his father smiled and said that no matter what further decision his son made, his life would still be 100 times worse than his father. Dantalian waved his hand and wanted to hit his father so that he would disappear. He thought about his father shutting up because he was infuriating him, told him to leave and never come back. And so he began to come to his senses that someone had touched him, and then someone called him Mr. Dantalian. Opening his eyes, he saw a pretty cute girl in front of him and woke up. Our hero did not understand who she was. He was lying in bed and his wounds were bandaged. She thought that he was not fully awake. Then she used some kind of magic and a piece of paper appeared in front of her. She wanted to get straight to the point. She told him that 2 months ago she lent him 100 Libra 100. In addition, the interest on the loan is currently 96 Libra. That is, altogether it comes out to 196, and she asked him to pay off the debt today. Our hero didn't understand what she was saying at all, and besides, was it really this woman? He tried to bring everything down to a cop. It all started 3 weeks ago when he was pulled into this world. The body of one of the weakest Demon King's ranks last. Opening his eyes, he saw in front of him a detachment of adventurers already growing towards his death. And then he put his own life on the line for the chance to destroy them. When he killed the last interest, he fell to the ground with his sword stuck in the ground. He felt very tired. Besides, he had lost a lot of blood and thought that it was finally all over. A system appeared in front of him and informed him that his level had been increased and he had 100 Libra. Now he has a choice of what skill he wants to gain. And besides, the system reported that now after killing this person, all his skills are cancelled. But he can choose one of the proposed skills. He thought that this looked like the beginning of his development in this world. Is everything really just beginning? He didn't want to talk about it. But would he be able to survive in Dantalian's body in this case? At the moment, there is no guarantee that he will be able to return to his world. So all he can do is continue to try to survive here? Then it is important to choose the right skill. Which one suits him best? Damn skills, for example, the Eye of Zeus, Contact of Hades, Legacy of Kronos, Apostles of Aphrodite, Apostle of Ares, Hearing of Hera, Hand of Poseidon, Sweeping Legs, Apostle of Apollo, Apostle of Dreams, Apostle of Dionysus. After considering all this, he decided that he wanted to learn a skill called Apostle of Aphrodite, from which the skill would allow him to see the statistics of his opponents and the level of their sympathy for him. There is even the ability to read their thoughts. This is a very convenient skill. Therefore, he decided to take him. He was lying leaning on the golem. And so he felt very tired. He began to fall, and the golem supported him. He had a strong fever and felt like he was losing consciousness. Looking around, I thought it was like I hadn't slept for several days in a row. The golem held him in his arms. She was a hero and told him to let him lie down for a while. Right now, he really wants to sleep. Having said this, he immediately fell asleep. When he woke up, the next thing he remembers is being in bed. This was Dantalian's room. Everything was scattered here and some things were destroyed. Probably the golem took him here. Our hero hoped that recent events were just a dream, but he is still in this body. And he remembers perfectly what happened. Our hero came up to the window. He wondered if he could survive in the body of the Demon King. Ignoring my disturbing thoughts, a new troublemaker immediately appeared. It was a girl with an icy gaze. She was clearly also a demon, and her name was Lapis Lazuli. Dantalian sits on his throne and speaks to my interlocutor that he repeats again that he did not borrow any money. But the lady with an icy look said that after all, let him forgive her for her rudeness, but she doesn't understand why he says that. 2 months ago, he took out a loan from their trading company. She is absolutely sure of it. She also showed him proof in the form of a promissory note, but it clearly stated how much he borrowed at what percentage. Dantalian thought that nothing was working out for him. They had been walking in the same circle with her for a week now. First, he was attacked by thieves and now by debt collectors. The world couldn't be worse. But why should he give anything away? Sort out this mess for Dantalian? Dantalian turned to the girl and said that they needed to start with the fact that they themselves were the first to be stupid. There was no need to lend to such a fool. And then what are you thinking about? And asked his interlocutor, can she answer him one question? She said that she was listening to him carefully. Dantalian told her if she knew what would happen if he did not repay the debt. She replied that she knew what would happen. Firstly, he would be declared bankrupt. Dantalian thoughtfully asked what would happen after he was declared bankrupt. She told him that then their trading company would have all the rights to own the Demon King's castles, and then they will give him several small instructions and he will be obliged to carry them out. He will also have to listen to their instructions unquestioningly. Dantalian said that he understood this, and then said that he wanted to ask one last question. He asked the girl what day it is. She did not expect such a question and looked at his interlocutor in surprise. All this time she was kneeling in front of him, and our hero behaved very confidently. The girl asked His Majesty what he means when he talks about this. Dantalian said that he wanted to hear the exact date. Then the girl asked him for forgiveness and said that today is April 17th, 1505. 6 days have passed since the date of repayment of the principal debt. Too much, so the interest will only increase and he will become bankrupt. Then he replied that he understood everything. Then he turned to her again and said that he had a counter-offer to her. The girl looked at him in surprise and he said that he needed a loan for another 10,000 libra. Now let's fast forward to April 20th, 1505, according to the imperial calendar. In the branch of the Kunsk Trading Company, a goblin with papers was quickly running along the corridors. He was very excited. But he didn't know what to do. He didn't have time to do anything. It was the head of the department of the Kunst Company named Torker. She turned to the little fairy who was flying next to him and told her to hand over this document to Her Majesty Payman, and not later than 8 o'clock. He also asked her what was happening with the ships in the port of Batavia. He was told that there were no problems, and then the goblin said it means he would sail on time. But he looked at his watch and realized that they were on time. How did they decide to gather the entire leadership in time? What the hell happened? After some time, Torker ran into the right office and asked for forgiveness for the wait. Everyone had already gathered there. The man who was sitting at the head said that Torker was late. For them traders, time is money. He was ordered to quickly sit down in his place. After all, they were already delayed, and now they are starting the meeting. The Kunsk Trading Company is a company patronized by the Demon King Malbus, who ranks 5th in the ranking, and the Demon Queen Paimon, who ranks ninth in the ranking. In the entire world of demons, this is the best trading company, and at the head of this company is one of the three true vampires named Ivar Lodbrok. Ivar addressed those present and said that today they were all gathered here for one reason. He turned to a girl with pink hair named Lapis and told her to tell them everything. There were many different creatures in this world. These were kobolds, werewolves, ghouls, and other creatures. They asked if this was not a hybrid of a human and a succubus. They were outraged that this girl forgot at the management meeting. This is where the damn blood is. They were indignant that she was not even a leader, but an ordinary employee, Ivar, so that they would all shut up. The leader then turned to Lapis Lapis and told her to continue what she had to say. And finally, this sweet girl said that recently the Demon King Dantalion, who ranks 71st, made a request for an additional loan. The goblin who heard this was very indignant. Were they really gathered for such a trifle? He got angry and told this half-breed to stop talking nonsense. He asked the chairman how to understand this. The chairman told him to calm down, because now everything will be clear to him. Ivar told Lapis to clarify what amount Dantalion asked for, and the girl replied that Dantalion made a request for 10,000 libras. We were very surprised when we learned about this huge amount. And it's already true. It's also equivalent to the budget of a small country. The goblin stood up from his seat in surprise and asked, "Did this fool really say that?" The succubus girl replied that everything was correct. She remembered how she sat right in front of him and asked His Highness if he really wanted this. Dantalion asked her, did she not hear? He said that you want to borrow 10,000 libra. She said that she didn't understand, because he already owed them 196 libra. Dantalion said that's why he's taking out a bigger loan. Lapis turned to His Highness and said that she really did not understand what he meant. Dantalion said that he would explain everything to her now, and then asked why their company put aside money for him. Everyone knows him as the mediocre Demon King, right? The succubus looked down and said that it's not so. She doesn't think so. Dantalion said that everything is fine. He thinks that from the very beginning they did not expect that he would repay the debt, and so they wanted to make him bankrupt and make him a dog on a leash for the company. All this time while he was saying this, he was getting closer and closer to the girl. Then he said that this is the true goal, isn't he right? The sweet girl felt very uncomfortable at that moment, but she said that he was mistaken. Dantalion, you said that in that case. Let her allow him to rephrase the question. He asked her if it was true that the trading company ordered her to ingratiate herself with him and lend him money. Lapis told him that this was not so, it was her own initiative. Dantalion smiled and then laughed some more and then said that he understood. This woman is lying and does not blush. Then he decided to return to the main topic. She asked him why he needed 10,000 libras, and he would answer her now. Our hero told her that this means that he agrees to become their dog for the rest of his life. And in return, he only asked for 10,000 libra, a fairly cheap deal, then asked what she would say to this. The girl did not understand at all what he was talking about, but he told her that in addition, this was a very profitable agreement for her. After all, she will be able to become famous somehow that she single-handedly managed to turn from the Demon King into a servant of a trading company. And success is guaranteed to her. Then he touched her chin and asked her what would she say. He moved closer and closer to her face and asked whether she agreed or not. The girl grabbed his hand and pulled his hand away from her face, and then said that she agreed. All this time the goblin was indignant, saying that he couldn't even return 100 libras. Is this really some kind of trap? A man with gray hair and a beard said that this was a fair point. He told Lapis to tell everyone what she thought about it. Dantalion had already foreseen that this question might arise, and she could answer as follows. Lyaps said that Dantalion has gone mad. Now he is suffering from the plague of this world. Without special medicine, he will die. Besides, he does it for the sake of his beloved. The goblin looked at her in general bewilderment and asked, is she really saying sensible things now? She replied that everything was so, and dared to say that he meant Lapis, because she is the beloved of the Demon King Dantalion. Then the guys who were sitting in this hall asked her if she even understood what she said. What an insidious woman. She said that on her own initiative she became close to Dantalion for this moment. Then those who were sitting in this hall shouted that she was a despicable half-breed. Did she really decide to lay hands on the Demon King? They shouted for someone to throw this harlot out of here. The succubus said that all this was so that he would become a dog of their great company. Everyone in the hall started laughing loudly, especially Ivar, who said that this was excellent. He asked those guys what they would say to this. This human hybrid only recently joined them, but she is already ready to sacrifice her innocence to get rid of the fate of garbage, and now she is the mistress of the Demon King. Ivar laughed so hard that his eyes turned red and shouted that this was simply excellent. They in this company really value the merits of their subordinates. At first, he could not understand why she gave a loan to this reckless Dantalian. But now everything has become clear to him, and they will provide him with special funding. Now the head told Lapis to return back to the Demon King's castle and tell him that they will give him 10,000 libra as he wishes. May 3, 1505 according to the imperial calendar, trade city of Kairos. The man turned to Mrs. Lapis and asked what brought her here. The girl replied that she was brought here by this thing, in her hands. She was holding a small plant and said that she wanted them to collect all the grass of this type, absolutely everything that they could find on the continent. Her interlocutor replied that she would have to hire 1,000 people. Paying for their labor would cost her 8,000 libra. He asked if she was confident. She replied that she was sure, and he asked her what kind of grass it was. It looked like an ordinary weed. The girl answered him that they should not worry about it. This was the order of the Demon King Dantalian. Then that man asked her for forgiveness and said that he would certainly get to work. When the succubus girl walked through the streets of the city, people looked at her with a grin. They discussed her and said behind her back that she was running on behalf of the most mediocre Demon King. Did he really decide to spend all his money on weeds? It looks like Dantalian has gone completely crazy. Someone laughed with her and said that it's not for nothing that they call her a mudblood. The following events take place on June 20th, 1505, according to the imperial calendar in the castle of our hero. Lapis came to him and said that his order had been fulfilled. They did everything as he asked. There was not a single blade of grass left on the entire continent. The grass was stored in pre-prepared storage areas. Dantalian closed the book he was reading and said that now everything is clear to him, and she did a good job. The girl turned to His Highness and asked if he could tell her what he was up to. She said that he told her that he needed such a large sum in connection with the upcoming epidemic. As a result, he was buying up useless weeds. Dantalian understood that he was doing this for a reason. He turned to his interlocutor and asked what she thought. The girl said that she would be frank and she saw absolutely no logic in his actions. Dantalian took his glass and smiled, and then said that it was not so important what she thought. But first, he wanted to celebrate her success and he suggested making a toast. The girl replied that it was not worth doing this. Dantalian wondered if she thought that he had slipped something into the glass. The girl said in a calm voice that she didn't think so, then asked for forgiveness for her rudeness. Still, she accepted that glass, and our hero said that he was joking and there was no need to frown so much. They would try again. She did a good job, so we should drink to their future. She nevertheless agreed and began drinking this drink from that glass. But it was not wine. She asked our hero what it was. Dantalian put his hand to his forehead and remained silent for several seconds. Then, he looked at the girl and said that this was the fruit of her labors, a decoction of collected herbs. And then he asked her how she was feeling and was she warm. "It tastes pretty good," the girl asked His Majesty. Is he really joking? Dantalian is no joke. The trading company should already know why he took 10,000 libra. They believe that he has gone crazy and is making a cure for a non-existent disease. Dantalian also said that if you think about it like that, there is some truth to it. Lapis looked at him as if he were some kind of fool who misunderstood what he was doing. Dantalian smiled again and said that now they would move on to the main thing. He asked her if she knew what date it was today. The nice lady said that today is June 20th, 1505 according to the imperial calendar, and then she asked, "Is today some special date?" Dantalian said that he understood, which means that starting tomorrow she may not come to the castle. Instead, he wants her to look in this place and check how things are going there. He gave her some piece of paper and she looked at it and asked, why should she go there and what is the point of it? Dantalian looked at her with a mysterious look and said that she should go and understand everything herself. He said that he knows that she has had a hard time lately. Taking breaks and relaxing is also important. June 24th, 1505. According to the imperial calendar, events take place in the kingdom of Sardinia Hot Springs. There was that same girl with pink hair and she was thinking that she wouldn't understand this guy. What the hell was he up to? She undressed and put a towel on her body and then went to the hot springs. There were many beautiful women of different races there. She thought about what he could need in such a place. She felt a little awkward here, but then calmly climbed into the warm water. She was thinking that if you believe the notes in the list that the Demon King gave her, is this whole story with the epidemic? True, some words were written in order in the note. The Kingdom of Sardinia, Syracuse Hot Springs, body pain, temperature, black spots. She thought that this was impossible. He was not able to predict the future. Well, for some reason she was very worried at the moment. and suddenly she heard that something had happened. She immediately got out of the water and walked towards the incident, and asked one girl what happened. The lady who was sitting next to the girl with green hair fell to the ground, said that she just fell. Lapis tried to bring her to her senses and asked what happened to her. That girl with green hair said that she was in a lot of pain. Lapis asked, "What hurt her?" The girl replied that her whole body hurt, and besides, she had a fever. Lapis told her to be patient, because they would take her to the hospital. But suddenly she saw something that she really didn't want to see. It was a black spot on her body. Everything was just like on the list. He had already thought of everything in advance. Lapis looked at this girl with green hair with resistance, not understanding what was happening. Suddenly there was a scream. The girls who were there just started falling to the ground. Lapis didn't understand what the hell was going on here. The next event takes place in the hospital. Many simply died that day. The doctors were fussing and trying to accommodate those who were still living in the wards. But there were already more than 30 patients there. What the hell was going on? Lapis just sat on the bench, wondering what was happening. She thought it was impossible. There must be a reasonable explanation for all this. Suddenly, someone interrupted her thoughts. It was the doctor who asked her if she was okay. She replied that she was fine, but the doctor said that everyone who was at the hot springs died except her. And then he told her that it was best for her to leave this city as soon as possible. The girl began to remember something. She looked at her hands. Then she remembered how she drank that strange drink that the Demon King gave her. He then said that this was the fruit of her labors, a decoction of collected herbs. Now she understood what was wrong. She drank the medicine that day, and therefore she alone survived. The whole puzzle is complete. Is it really true? Dantalion is not such a madman. He really foresaw the epidemic, and besides, he knows the cure for this disease. July 16th, 1505. According to the imperial calendar, the Kunsk Trading Company, Amstel branch, at this place the fairy was carrying some documents. A woman came up to a goblin named Torker and said that she was asking for forgiveness for disturbing him. They were sitting in the goblin's office. He turned to her and asked for forgiveness for being rude. And then someone knocked on the door and he shouted that he had a meeting with Her Highness and let them all leave here. The lady who was next to him said that everything was fine. It must be an urgent matter. It was a rather hot lady named Paimon, the queen of charm and beauty, the 9th-ranked demon. She said that there was no need to worry and that she would wait. The goblin said that he was sincerely sorry, and then asked the one who was behind the door to tell him what they wanted. And she said that the main office had recently contacted them, and while she was carrying those documents, it was clearly difficult for her. The goblin took the documents and began to read, then said that if there was some kind of nonsense in there, then he was a corpse. Suddenly he saw that it was written there that an outbreak of an infectious disease had occurred. The disease had spread throughout the kingdom of Sardinia, the first focus of infection in Syracuse. In the coming days, the disease would reach neighboring countries. The mortality rate was 80%. The lady who was sitting opposite the goblin asked what's going on. He also read in the same message that there was information that the Demon King Dantalion has remedies against infection. On his orders, their specialist Lapis organized the collection of herbs necessary for the medicine throughout the continent. The current value of Dantalion's property is estimated at approximately 3 million gold coins. An urgent meeting of the board of directors has been scheduled. Then the lady with the horns stretched out her hand and said, "Damn, let her look at something written." Naturally, he immediately gave her this sheet of paper and she began to read what was written there. The goblin looked at the lady with fear and asked her what she thought about it. The hot lady with horns smiled. She seemed not at all excited and said that it was interesting. And now, let's go back to our hero who is standing at the window and looking into the distance. He saw that a storm was approaching. He was thinking about something, but did not expect that guests would come to him. The door opened and Dantalion noticed that the succubus girl had returned to him. He asked her if she was able to relax in the place where she was. She stood in front of him and was silent without saying a single word. Dantalion looked at her and said what happened to her. She looks pale. He believes that she didn't like the hot springs. The girl finally spoke and said, "What does he mean?" She told him to avoid answering. Why did the epidemic happen? The herb he told her to collect turned out to be a miracle cure. It started to rain heavily outside. Dantalion asked his interlocutor, "What is she talking about? Why is she surprised? Didn't he warn her about this?" But she's right. From the very beginning, he knew what would happen next and what awaited them. It turns out his system told him some events that could happen in the future. The system took him to 1515, when the whole world plunged into darkness. The whole world was plunged into darkness. An outbreak of epidemic occurred at the hot springs of Syracuse in the summer of 1505. And only a year later it turned out that black grass has miraculous properties and is a cure for the plague. Before that, it was considered an ordinary weed. Our hero found himself in exactly this period of time. Knowledge about this era turned out to be incredibly useful. When the girl came to him with a promissory note, he noticed the required date there. He definitely wouldn't have been able to cope without this girl who came here. And so he turned to her and asked what the trading company said about all this. She said that there is real chaos in the company now. It's more like an enraged hive. The entire leadership had just been called for an emergency meeting. Dantalian said that it was clear why. Dantalian approached the girl and asked why she was standing here and not running there as fast as she could. Why did she come to him? And then asked, does she think it's dangerous for her to return there now? The trading company probably thinks that this was impossible. Who can predict the beginning of the epidemic? So someone deliberately released this disease into the world, but who did it and why? And they all have an answer? Lapis did it. They will think that she crushed the stupid demon king by becoming his lover, after all. She herself told them that she could make him an obedient dog of the company. And then there was such a coincidence, she found herself at the right time in the place where the plague began. Earlier, she had searched the entire continent in search of a miraculous herb. All this looks very much like betrayal, and most likely they are already thinking about it that way. Since she came here and not to the company, she herself should understand this. Now the girl was truly frightened for the first time. She felt in a hopeless situation. Lapis reflected that her birth itself had treated her like garbage. She had to work tirelessly to achieve this position and prove to everyone what she was worth. And now, all her efforts were in vain. Everything she had strived for so long collapsed in an instant. She was interested in the question of who he was, as if what was in front of her now was not the demon she knew before. Now her head is covered with the thought of, what if this is not Dantalian at all? Our hero told his interlocutor that now she has only one path, she can bow before him. If she does this, he will give her real power. All medicines will be transferred under her control. She looked at him in surprise. Now there was a turning point in her life. Dantalian said that this world is destined to face an epidemic. Many will die. Women and children, rich and poor, death spares no one. And those who considered her a mudblood, including, they will desperately look for a way to survive. And they will all come to her with a great desire to make a deal. Half man, half demon. So who was considered trash now holds in his hands the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. Our hero asked her if she wanted to have this power. What was her decision? The girl thought that she couldn't do this. She shouldn't agree. She felt that for some reason her heart was beating very quickly. At first she was very worried. Then something happened. She smiled and stood on one knee in front of our hero, agreeing with him. She began to say that she was entrusting her life to him. From now on she would faithfully serve the demon king Dantalian. After all these words, she kissed the hand of her new master. Dantalian said that in exchange for her sincere confession, he would guarantee her a seat in the front row. The following events take place a week later. Lapis prepared a delicious meal for her king. While she was carrying this food, she was thinking about some things that I did not so long ago. The girl constantly replayed in her head the idea that she had entrusted her life to him. So she approached his chambers and said that she had brought him lunch. Well, no one opened it for her for a long time, and she just stood in front of the door for several seconds. She then asked him for his trouble and entered the room. Since the Demon King became her new master, he either reads the books that were in the castle, or he was just sleeping. Like now, he fell asleep right at the table reading a book. He began to turn around and the book fell from his head. The girl stood and looked at him for a while. She didn't understand him at all. She really wanted to know what was going on in his head. Now let's go back 6 months. She contacted him and wanted to get a promotion in the company. Then, the girl with pink hair introduced herself to the demon and said that she was a representative of a trading company and told her what her name was. But the demon did not want to listen to her and closed her mouth. He said that he was not interested in the name of some pathetic female with dirty blood. He was busy now and wanted her to speak faster. Then she remembered that he was still that kind of trash, as she had expected. As soon as she showed him the money, he immediately pounced on it. And all that remained was to tell whoever needed it that treasures had appeared in the castle of the Demon King. And as it turned out, then she told Luf about these treasures, who went to kill the Demon King and take the treasures. The girl constantly thought that his words slightly hurt her, and she wanted to make him feel pain. But this Demon King who is now in front of her is beyond her understanding. Now the life of the entire population of the continent is in his hands. Well, I didn't understand how in such a situation he could just sleep peacefully. Several countries have already sent warning letters about purchasing herbs. It was difficult for her to believe that the trading company would remain silent in such a situation. Meanwhile, the goblin came to Mr. Ivar and asked if he could enter his office. Ivar. When he heard that Torker had come to him and said that he could come in, this was a branch of the Kunsk trading company, Ivar's room. He was almost in complete darkness. Next to him stood a candlestick on which candles were burning, and he told the goblin to sit down next to him. A whitish man with a beard asked his interlocutor, "What is the situation?" The goblin replied that the situation could not be worse. The epidemic continues to spread. It is only a matter of time before the plague engulfs the entire continent. Then, that man said that if you believe the calculations of their company, 30% of the population will die. The goblin asked in surprise, "Is it really going to be 30%? Maybe he's joking?" The menacing man looked at the goblin with red eyes and asked if he ever joked. The goblin answered his interlocutor that he never jokes. And Ivar also said one more thing. Today, all the lords suspended trading operations with their company. The goblin was very indignant. He hit the table with his fist and said that all this was because of that hybrid girl. Well, where is she now? The vampire said that they still have not been able to contact her. He believes that she planned to betray them from the very beginning. Apparently, Lapis was in the place where the outbreak of the epidemic occurred. And before that, I spent several weeks collecting injuries necessary to create a medicine. No one could have predicted the onset of the plague. Only God alone knows. In other words, this epidemic was not accidental. And it is obvious that this epidemic was created on purpose, Goblin said. Was it really intentional? Well, that's the question. Who is deliberately behind all this? It became clear to them that the girl released the disease into the world, but she could not have done this alone. Then the goblin thought about it and said, "What does it mean she did this with that Dantalian?" The gray-haired vampire said that if Dantalian had been capable of such a thing, he would never have sunk to such an insignificant position. Most likely he is a small insect, the same cog in this system as Lapis. The goblin wondered who the hell arranged all this. Is anyone really capable of starting an entire epidemic? Ivar thoughtfully said that he had one demon in mind that could do this. The goblin understood who he was talking about, and his interlocutor replied that everything was correct. One of the greatest lords of this continent, the immortal mage. How much can he do something so large-scale? The god of black magic and more useful, King Barbados, the 8th in the ranking of demons. The goblin said that if Barbados is involved in this matter, then anything is possible. After all, he hates people more than anyone. He did not start a war and destroyed more than one country. And what about us? It's mostly people and not demons who will suffer. In the worst case, they face extinction. Ivar said in a calm voice that this was in the spirit of the demon kings. The goblin asked, "But if this is the work of Barbados, then what should they do in this case? After all, their company has built strong friendships with many demon kings, which is why they have become so exalted. But if they have to oppose one of them, they need to carefully prepare and find strong evidence." The vampire said that he really thinks that they don't have enough evidence. Lapis and Dantalian should tell them everything. The vampire also said that there was no need to worry. He had already taken the necessary measures. After that, he smiled and said that they would regret coming his way. Suddenly, from somewhere out of the darkness, a rather pretty lady with green hair came to Mr. Ivar. She brought him some papers. Ivar laughed and said, "Have they already sent an answer?" As soon as he opened it and looked at something written, the sheet of paper immediately caught fire. It was some kind of magical message. The vampire laughed loudly. A sheet of paper was burning in his hands with a bright flame. He turned to Torker and told him to go to Her Highness Paimon and convey their request to her. She is the only one who is able to fight on equal terms with Barbados. Go Damn immediately agreed. He thought that Paimon and Barbatos were like cats and dogs. Her Highness Paimon would definitely agree to help them. The vampire began to laugh ominously. He began to turn into fog and said, "How did these brats dare to resist him?" The goblin asked Mr. Ivar what he was doing. He looked at this fog in bewilderment. The vampire said that he couldn't wait to finish them off one by one. When he said this, he bit the girl who came to him and began to drink her blood. Then he said that from the very beginning he will begin Lapis Lapis. She will become part of his collection of living dolls. Meanwhile, Lapis turned to our hero trying to wake him up. She told him to wake up, because they have problems. And finally, Dantalian opened his eyes. Lapis gave him an invitation that she held in her hands. Dantalian asked, "Where is this invitation?" The girl replied that this was an invitation to a meeting. She had never heard of it being organized so quickly. Meanwhile, the vampire wanted the demon kings who rule this world to gather in one place. Lapis told her interlocutor that it was written there that Walpurgis night would take place. Meanwhile, in a slightly different place, A certain witch was singing a song about how they were sailing through the magical sky to the land of dreams. She turned to her sister and told her to preach to her, "Who is their client?" Then her sister smiled and said that their next target was the demon king named Dantalion. Then she was delighted and said that this was really the same demon who fell in love with a half-demon and half-man. Another sister who also flew on a broom said that forbidden love is very romantic. There were several witches there. One of them told them not to invent unnecessary things. Very soon they will be there, and will be able to see everything with their own eyes. Now let's return to our hero. Lapis drowned him and told him to please move faster. Dantalion came out of the cave and asked her not to make any noise. It would be better if he told her where and why they were going. And in general, it's interesting to know what kind of Walpurgis night this is. She looked at him and said that he is all Demon King. Why is he asking? Had he never taken part in this meeting? Dantalion answered her that he had never participated in this. Then the girl decided to tell him what it was. She said that this is an important event where all the Demon Kings and their closest subordinates gather. Together they solve global problems in order to maintain the entire general order. The meeting is held irregularly, but all Demon Kings are invited to this meeting. Dantalion scratched his ear and said that then it doesn't concern him. The imperturbable girl turned to His Highness and said that the topic of this meeting was the plague. Nibelheim was chosen as the meeting place. One of the branches of the Kunsk Trading Company is located there, from which we can draw a conclusion. And the company itself initiated the meeting. At the moment, it has a monopoly on miracle drugs. And if he doesn't show up, no matter what the reason, they will come here. Dantalion thought that this was not good. He had just dealt with one problem and then another appeared. But one thing is clear. Kunska must not be allowed to use force against them. Dantalion, after listening to his interlocutor, said that they would go to this Walpurgis night. Negotiations provide at least some guarantee for a peaceful resolution of the situation. But in case of a bad outcome, he still has lapis lazuli. It was not in vain that he spent so much money. Our hero again had a plan for what to do next. He said that, by the way. How are they going to get there? It will be beneficial for the company if he doesn't show up. They will probably put a spoke in their wheels. Looking at her watch, the girl said that given this, she had prepared transport and accompanying people for them in advance. They should appear soon. And as soon as she said this, she immediately heard someone humming a melody. As it turned out, these were the same witches who sang the song. They flew in on their brooms and approached Dantalion, his assistant. They slowly and aesthetically began to descend from heaven to earth. All these girls were quite cute and dressed in the same style. They all put their hand to their heart and said that they thanked them for choosing their services. They are all Berber sisters to accompany His Majesty the Demon King Dantalion on his journey. They were glad to meet them, but our hero was shocked and stood in bewilderment at what was happening here. Dantalion turned to his assistant and said that these were some children. Was she sure that they would cope? Lapis turned out that there is no need to judge them by their appearance. The bodies of witches stop aging as soon as they enter into the first contract with the Demon King. The fact that they look like this proves their genius. Dantalion never ceased to be surprised by what he saw. Lapis said that each of them was at least 200 years older than her. Dantalion. Now he understood everything, and he decided that it was somehow rude on his part. He also greeted the Berber sisters and told them to raise their heads. He then said that he was grateful that they accepted their request, and hoped that the flight would be safe with them. The witches looked at the Demon King. They looked at him with some kind of admiration. Dantalion looked at Lapis, who strangely looked to the side and asked her, "What is it?" She answered nothing, and the witches said that they would immediately get down to business. One of them quickly conjured a large throne that was supported by a broom. Dantalion climbed onto this throne and asked the witch if everything would be fine. She sat right in front of him and told him not to worry. Then the witches asked for attention and thanked them for choosing the services of the Berber sisters. For them, it was a great honor. They also began to fly into the air. The weather is clear and they are catching a tailwind, and hope that they can enjoy the flight to Nibelheim. After some time, they reached Hermes Square, the very place where they needed to fly. Dantalion thought that sitting motionless for 6 hours was still torture. One of the witches who controlled the mark on which our hero was sitting said that she once again thanks him for his patience. When they were already there, Dantalion said that they had worked hard, and then asked if he could treat them to dinner. The witches were very surprised by his hospitality and friendliness. They said that they would be very grateful to him for this. One of the witches said that there was a popular restaurant nearby. Dantalion said that then, let them lead them there. Lapis asked her master why he wanted to go to that restaurant. Dantalion looked at her and asked if she herself wasn't tired. If he didn't eat, he wouldn't live to see the meeting. Dantalion told her not to be afraid. No one would attack them. She needed to relax. No fool would attack the demon king in the center of the city. At first she was silent for a while, then she agreed because, after all, her king. And finally, they almost came to that restaurant. There were quite a lot of different creatures there. For example, our favorite women goblins. Dantalian noticed that it was quite lively here. The witch told him that this was the only area where everyone was served, regardless of class and race. And now they were already quite close. The witch said that they were already close. Suddenly, our hero noticed that something was wrong here. He heard some noise and noticed that someone was being kicked. It was some man at whom someone was shouting very loudly and indignant about the fact that they don't serve normal guests here. The alcohol is rubbish. And besides, is it really possible to pay him any more money for this? The man who kicked the old man said that it is easier to get rid of old men like him than to pay him money. Dantalian turned to his assistant and asked what kind of garbage this was. Lapis answered him that this is the 72nd Demon King. His name is Andamarius. There are a total of 72 Demon Kings in this world. Dantalian is the 71st. He was interested in finding out what 72 was, and now it became clear to him. He went up to a man's table and took a drink from him. I think it was wine. Then he drank a little. After that, he raised his glass of wine up as if trying to attract attention to himself. Lapis was perplexed, but as always, in a calm tone and with a calm face, she asked, "What is he doing?" Dantalian started laughing and then threw that glass of wine on the ground. He said that this trip turned out to be something to do with nothing he expected. Now let's find out a little more about what's going on in this world and what awaits us next. One of the Demon Kings, he destroyed the village of one boy when he was still a child. Growing up, this boy gained a desire to take revenge on the Demon Kings and began to explore the world with his comrades on the way to achieving goals. The action takes place in 1515. According to the imperial calendar, our hero came to this world in 1505, exactly 10 years before the events began. Here, he is known as Dantalian, 71 demons, and the one who destroyed the main character's village and gave birth to the great warrior is Andamarius, the 72nd king of demons. And now he was beating up some old man simply because this demon king was a fool. He simply kicked him. Others looked at it and did not dare to approach. Dantalian was sure that it was him. Soon he would attack that boy's village. This white-haired demon was very angry and arrogant towards others. Our hero learned all these things from the system, and events are moving faster than he expected. And when he threw that glass to the ground, it broke, and that same white-haired king drew attention to him. He saw Dantalian behind him who was looking at him carefully. Then this unicorn turned to our hero and asked why he was staring at him. Dantalian simply smiled back at him, but this smile angered that demon even more. He began to approach our hero in a rage, asking why the hell he was smiling. Dantalian put his hand in his pocket and turned to his assistant. He asked her if Andamarius had any patrons. His assistant replied that, as far as she knew, he had no patrons. He spent most of his time in the gambling houses of Nibelheim, and he is known for using his status to torture people. Even the Demon Kings themselves consider him a disgraceful stain on their reputation. Dantalian said that he understands this. Then the demon approached them. He saw that they were not afraid of him at all. He thought, why are they standing like idols? When he saw this horn on the head of our hero, he realized who he was dealing with. Then he noticed that the girl had the distinctive sign of a succubus, which means she is that half-breed, which means the rumors about him are true. Lapis turned to her master and said that she wanted to ask him to refrain from rash actions. The battle between the Demon Kings could cause a lot of problems. Dantalian just smiled at her and said that this is a general law, right? The girl said that it is believed that Demon Kings are higher in rank than any aristocrat. They have incredible power that can destroy the world. And while there are only 72 kings, due to a number of obligations instead of the laws of the empire, they follow a general law that ensures their own safety as well as the protection of their enterprises. Any fights between Demon Kings are strictly prohibited, but she is sure that he himself knows this. If he, like a child, succumbs to emotions and is the first to get into a fight, then he will inevitably face punishment. Dantalian thought that this information was enough for him, and finally that unicorn approached him. He looked carefully at his interlocutor and asked if he knew who he was. Dantalian, as if provoking him, showed him his teeth and said that he didn't care about it. Why did Dantalian say that he watches this fool mock the weak, and it makes him want to puke? So let him just disappear from his sight. The naturally arrogant demon became angry at this turn of events and asked, did he really want to die? Dantalian smiled and said that, let him try to kill him, or is he stupid? At these words, that white-haired demon immediately rushed into the fray. Lapis saw that her boss was in danger and she also rushed into battle. Dantalion stopped her when she tried to help him in this matter. Dantalion seemed to be waiting for that madman to pounce on him and hit him. And finally, he almost came close to our hero's face with his fist, but then he suddenly stopped. He stopped right next to his forehead and began to chuckle evilly. Then he seemed to calm down and said that he had heard a rumor that one demon king had lost his memory, and he forgot what kind of blood flows in his veins. And now he runs around the hybrid like a dog, and has also made her his mistress. He put his hand on our hero's shoulder and said that he did not expect to meet him in such a place. Dantalion thought that he seemed like an ordinary idiot, and then asked his interlocutor how to understand this. The white-haired demon said that he almost hit Dantalion, and almost broke the general law. Well, the Demon King cannot attack each other. If he did not understand that he is the same Dantalion, then now he would definitely get into trouble. Then this man asked if Dantalion had deliberately provoked him and wanted him to attack first. The unicorn began to laugh loudly and said that his interlocutor really thought that he would fall for his trick. He said with a laugh that he attacked the wrong person. Now our hero seems to think that he was being stupid here. Then this white-haired demon targeted the girl and asked who they have here. This is the same temptress of the Demon King, the garbage rat. He laughed at her. She said that her face was quite cute. And then he said that they are hybrids and even smell disgusting. He poked his finger in her chest and asked what this idiot saw in her. He ran his finger over her body and said that he himself was interested in trying her out. She clearly didn't like it and asked him to stop doing it. Then this demon with a horn on his forehead turned to our hero and said that he wanted to talk about the general law. He only bans battles between demon kings. This means that he can beat the girl as much as he wants, and he immediately raised his lousy hand. And then he hit the girl in the face with all his might and she fell to the ground. Those who saw what happened were very tense at that moment. Here the mad demon laughed and said that he could hit anyone except Dantalion, and nothing would happen to him for it. He went crazy and shouted that he would teach this girl some manners and then return her to him. Just don't let her be offended if he ruins her face, and then asked if they agreed. Dantalion looked at all this. He certainly didn't like this situation, but now nothing could be done. The evil bastard threw the girl to the ground, and he clearly enjoyed it. Lapis laughed loudly as the lady with pink hair lay on the floor. The demon with white hair turned to everyone and said that whether they were a woman or a child, he would not spare anyone who stood in his way. He said that now they all must bow before him, otherwise he will kill them too. He was very proud of himself and said that if they did not bow to him, they would share the fate of this hybrid and experience its power. Those who saw this did not dare to speak out against the Demon King. They simply looked down. This demon then continued to mock the poor girl again. He swung his leg and then hit her hard in the ribs. She felt severe pain, but no one helped her. Who could save her? And that demon really enjoyed it. He said that it couldn't be better. Our hero stood aside. He did nothing. Meanwhile, the unicorn turned to him and asked how he was feeling. There he laughed loudly and said that he was beating his woman right in front of his eyes, but he couldn't even lift a finger. Well, more and more saturated with this power that he had, he shouted for them to say his name. He is the one who stands on top of this world. His face changed. He was so distraught that he shouted that there was no one stronger than him in this world. Dantalion suddenly, for some reason, he began to laugh when the white-haired demon asked him, "What's the matter?" Dantalion told him that he had just made such a pathetic speech, but even he wondered how many people here would listen to him. Then the white-haired demon asked if Dantalion really refuses to accept his defeat. He said that if they themselves do not obey, then he will simply use force like a hybrid. Dantalion asked his interlocutor, "Does he really think that anyone here cares about his power?" Such words angered the narcissistic demon even more, and he immediately looked at the helpless girl who began to rise from the floor. She stood on her feet and began to wipe the dirt from her face. The white-haired demon was angry that she was tired from the floor. If she had lay there and not twitched, then he would not have been going to beat her too much. But for some reason the girl looked at him with a completely calm gaze, as if she was not afraid of him at all. Then the demon shouted that this hybrid was too arrogant and hit her in the face again. But this time she didn't fall. She still stood on her feet but did nothing. She again looked into his eyes completely calmly. And again the demon hit her. He shouted that she was a damn insect, and he was going to show her where her place was. He beat her very hard in the face. Others watched and were horrified by what was happening. Our hero just looked at it. He didn't react in any way and seemed to be absolutely calm. The girl felt severe pain, but she just stood there and allowed herself to be beaten. In fact, she was a hybrid from childhood and grew up in the slums, and she was used to beatings. Therefore, Andromarius's fists are not scary for her. She quite often had to endure such beatings. The evil demon king did not understand why she did not fall and hit her in the face again and again. He repeated that he is the king of demons in this world. He is the king, and everyone must obey him. And finally, our hero decided to intervene. He saw a knife on the table and asked to borrow it for a while from the man who was sitting there. The girl could barely stand on her feet. It was hard and painful for her. The demon king who beat her didn't understand what was wrong with this girl. He was the demon king. Why was she still standing? Well, she raised her head up and looked at him with a contemptuous look. The demon just lost his temper and didn't understand why she was looking down on him. He would kill her because of this. And just as he was about to do this, Dantalion immediately appeared right in front of him and used the blade that took his hand. He swiped his knife with a sharp movement and cut the face of the demon who was beating his assistant. Everyone was very surprised at this turn of events. These demon kings cannot fight. Then the white-haired demon king fell to the ground and held his eyes and screamed loudly. Dantalion said that he doesn't even understand who he can raise his hand against and who he can't, so these eyes are useless, and he doesn't need them. Lapis turned to her master and asked what he was doing. Now he will be considered the initiator. Dantalion quickly grabbed Lapis by the waist and abruptly pulled her towards him. He hugged her and affectionately called her Lala and told her that she had held out well. Then he hugged her very tightly. The girl was shocked by this turn of events. Hugging her, he said that he was grateful to her with all his heart. He had already matured a plan. He asked her to quickly give him her hand. The girl gave him her hand in surprise, not understanding what was happening. Dantalion, you told her that he wanted to do this in a more formal setting, but now she is so radiant that he cannot resist. Lala still couldn't stop being surprised by what was happening next. Dantalion put a diamond ring on her hand. She asked what His Highness was doing. Dantalion told her not to say anything, just to be silent and watch. Our hero addressed the people of Nibelheim and raised Lal's hand. He said that his name is Dantalion and he is the 71st Demon King, and next to him is his love. And even though they are from different worlds, it doesn't matter to them. Even if he is forbidden to be with her, he will still love her. Andromarius began to mock his beloved for no reason. He turned to the residents and asked if he could turn a blind eye to this. Doing something like this is simply unforgivable, even for a demon king. Lala simply silently listened to her master's speech. Nothing like this had ever happened to her. Everyone who saw what happened thought that this could not happen. He really went against the rules against the demon king, for the sake of his beloved. Dantalion turned to the girl with pink hair and told her to look back. This is quite a spectacle. How long will everyone turn a blind eye to the actions of this unprincipled demon king? He called to people and other creatures and asked, are they really satisfied with everything? If there is justice in this world, then doesn't he deserve to be punished? The white-haired demon king who was bleeding regenerated a little, then told our hero to shut up. What kind of punishment is he talking about? Because here he is the only one who is wrong. He fell for this small fry and broke the general law by attacking another demon king. He felt pain, but his eyes could already see a little. He is still a demon and regenerates quite quickly. He then raised his hands up and shouted for someone to grab Dantalion. After all, he broke the law of the demon kings, and if they do not agree, he will kill them. This unicorn shouted that Dantalion had no right to interfere, and he hurt himself. Dantalion went up to Andromarius and said that he was talking some nonsense. Dantalion looked down on him and asked why he was still so arrogant. Didn't he understand yet? He turned to the residents of the city and said that on behalf of the demon king, he found him guilty. And now the residents of this city must decide what punishment he will suffer. The local residents were very fond of that white-haired demon who constantly prevented them from living in peace. Dantalion said that they are demon kings that exist to this day thanks to other races. And he was just lucky to be born as a demon king? That doesn't mean he should be so arrogant towards other points. He imagines himself to be something unknown. Moreover, instead of fulfilling his duties as the king of demons, he hangs around bars and casinos. And he even dares to raise his hands against the weak and beat them up. What kind of demon king is this? After all, he doesn't even know how to behave correctly. He must treat others with respect too. There is no place for someone like him in their wonderful world, in a world of such good people. Dantalion continued his speech without saying that for the sake of their lands and for the sake of their future. Is it really worth leaving someone like him alive? So the time had come to act. He turned to the heroes of Nibelheim. Everyone who heard his speech, be it elves or people, had never heard anything like this before. After all, no one had yet dared to go against his crazy demon king. He shouted for them to shut up because they should listen to him. He looked around and shouted that they should quickly grab that guy and let this damn trash try to obey him. Dantalion said that a lot of despair is pouring out from his interlocutor. Is he really panicking? Dantalion said that everything is clear to him. He is afraid because of Dantalion he cannot see normally. The demon shouted for his interlocutor to shut up and get away from here. Dantalian said that everything was clear to him. Now he would never understand who would kill him. But from such anger, this demon could not regenerate normally. His vision deteriorated. And finally, someone stabbed a sword into his back. The 72nd Demon King definitely did not expect this. He didn't understand who did it. He just didn't see the one who was killing him. As it turned out, this was the same man whom he also kicked so much. Dantalian walked up to his interlocutor and put his hand on his shoulder while he was bleeding. He said that everything went exactly as he had planned and thanked him for it. The mad demon was in despair. He could no longer see anything. He was bleeding and slowly dying. Suddenly he heard a sound. He began to look around, not understanding what was happening. It turned out that the crowd began to chant the word, "I will kill." The panic of the demons grew more and more. He could survive the sword in his back, but if he was cut into pieces, he would definitely not survive. People approached him to hack him to death. The demon understood that this would happen now. He asked what they were planning and that they stop. Dantalian turned away from him and approached Lapis, whom he called Lala. He said that this demon deserved what happened to him. What goes around comes around. This is cause and effect. Once again, he looked at his demon and asked if he had heard of this. Then our hero said that they were done here and it was time to move on. Lala and the witches who accompanied our hero looked at what was about to happen to that demon. And he was hacked to death in the most brutal way, and even after he died, they simply began to chop him into pieces. Dantalian turned to the girls and said that he was very tired and wanted them to eat next time. After all, we said that they understand everything. It's better for him to rest today. One of the witches said that they would take him to the hotel. Dantalian noticed that one witch was missing here. He asked where she was. One of the witches looked around and asked how the devil Beatrice disappeared again. Again, she's on her own. She has a habit of wandering alone. Dantalian said that this is not so important. If she wants to take a walk, then let her take a walk. There are more important things to do. He turned to the witches and said that he had one more request for them. The witches were already impressed by the Demon King, and they were surprised to think about what he would ask them to do. Meanwhile, one of the witches who loved to walk alone was flying on her broom and thinking that she did not expect this. She remembered everything that happened there and thought about what Dantalian looked like he would show himself. And now let's move to the company where Mr. Ivar is the chief. A goblin was walking along the corridor of this castle, thinking that Walpurgis night would take place tomorrow. But I haven't heard anything from Mr. Ivar for a whole week. He came to one office and turned to him asking, "Can I come in?" Well, no one answered him. Then he slowly opened the door and asked if he was here. Having opened the office, he noticed that there were several coffins there and complete silence. The goblin thought that there was no one here. Where the hell were he? Suddenly he heard some noise in this gloomy room and looked up the mountain. There was a window on the high wall, and through the window, a witch addressed him. She was dressed entirely in black and had black hair. A spider was sitting on her arms, and she asked, "Did Torker look after the company well?" She then carefully jumped off the windowsill and landed next to one coffin. The goblin asked her with interest where she had been all this time. It seems the goblin knew that it was Mr. Ivar, only in a different guise. Ivar said that he himself wanted to look at everything that was happening there, especially on Dantalian and Lapis, who was with him all this time. The goblin asked his boss if he found out anything. Ivar, in the guise of a witch, said that they didn't talk about the plague at all. But something very interesting happened at Hermes Square. The goblin asked what exactly happened there, and his interlocutor replied that it would turn out that he had slightly underestimated him. Dantalian is not as simple as it seems, but some things remain true. He is head over heels in love with the hybrid, which means this is his weak point. Who would have thought that Lapis would become his lover? Then Ivar turned to Torker and asked him to tell him if there was a response from Her Highness Paimon. The goblin said that Her Highness agreed to take them aside, and she would do everything possible to make sure they succeed. Ivar opened one of the coffins and began to go in while he laughed. He said that everything was clear to him. And he simply climbed into one of the coffins and then closed the lid of the coffin. After this, something began to happen. A bright light and black smoke began to shine from the coffin. This went on for some time, and some kind of energy began to emanate from the closed coffin. And finally, the lid of the coffin began to open and a completely different hand came out. Now Ivar came out of the coffin in his true form and told the goblin to listen to him carefully and let him convey his words to Her Highness Paimon. Already today, in years, he has not felt such impatience in anticipation of tomorrow, those who must build for him and repay all his debts. 24 hours have passed since the encounter with that unicorn, and Walpurgis night has arrived. In honor of this, a lot of people gathered, and there was also a lot of security there. Everything was very beautifully decorated, and the first demon king to arrive came. People looked at who arrived here and they looked at it with delight. A carriage with horses, driven by the coachman, arrived at the majestic castle. This demon queen was greeted with all honors and in the best traditions. It was that same chic and beautiful lady. They gave her a hand and greeted her. And they said that it was a great happiness for them to meet such an important person. They were really looking forward to her. Everyone bowed their heads to her. Her Highness Paimon was highly respected. She turned to the man who was holding her hand and asked if the negotiations with Ivar had ended. Then that man replied that everything went smoothly and everything was fine. Then she said that she didn't see a single familiar face here. Had she really arrived too early? Suddenly, one man turned to everyone and told the citizens to make way. The demon king was coming. A cart with horses was coming here. The cart was black, and the horses were somewhat aggressive. The people who were there began to move aside. They were a little panicked. After all, it was very dangerous. The horses were aggressive and could kill with their hooves. Finally, another very important person appeared in front of them and angrily knocked down the cart door. She was very angry and said that her butt was already tired of sitting. It was some aggressive girl who asked where this vile smell came from. This is a black mage. She is the god of diseases named Barbados and takes 8th place in the ranking. She said that she stinks like an old sow. When she saw that beautiful woman, she was very angry that she was here. Then she pointedly said that even their noble harlot would just look at her. Paimon told her that nothing had changed. She still had the same disgusting taste. Then her interlocutor with white hair said that she heard that Paimon recently spent the night with 3 centaurs, and that centaur did whatever he wanted with her. Paimon replied that her interlocutor behaves so vulgarly. In a place like this, maybe she will finally calm down and start acting like an adult? And then I try to humiliate her, and she said that with such a body she is very far from adulthood. Naturally, this made that arrogant girl very angry. And Paimon said that apparently she was destined to remain a child forever. But her inferiority complex should not become someone else's problem. Then the girl with a bottle in her hand screamed that she would cut off her sagging pieces of fat right there. The situation between them was very tense. It seemed that they were about to come to blows here. But another horse cart arrived and they were interrupted. Another demon king arrived. Then the girls were distracted and turned their attention to who arrived here next. This was our hero. Lala was next to him. Dantalion told her to hold his hand, and his interlocutor told him not to worry about her. When people saw this couple, they were very surprised. This is the same Dantalion. Lala turned to her master and said that she wanted to introduce him to those who were here. Dantalion told her not to say anything because he already knows about everything. And it seems that the show's participants also know who they are. But there is no need to be afraid. While they got out of the carriage, they all froze in place and didn't say anything. They just watched them. Dantalion was absolutely calm, as if he knew what to do next, and told his assistant that they should go forward. But first, let's look at what happened 30 minutes before arriving on Walpurgis night. While Dantalion and his assistant were riding in the carriage, the girl told him that she could not go with him. Dantalion asked her what she came up with this time, and if she was too nervous, it didn't seem like her. Dantalion understood that there would probably be a ball just before the meeting. He asked Lal what he should do there without a partner. Does she really want him to go there alone? Lala looked at him silently and said nothing. She had a completely calm but clearly dissatisfied face. Dantalion asked, "What's the matter? Is she still angry because of what happened yesterday?" She remembered all the moments that happened last time and remembered how she felt then. But today, our hero told her that there was no choice then, and he had to do it. She felt as if she was being used again. Our hero looked out the window and realized what it looked like. It wasn't very good. The girl said that this is not the case. Only demon kings and some of the upper-class demons can take part in Walpurgis night. Therefore, it will be impossible for a person like her to participate in such an event. Dantalion now understood what she was worried about and then decided to discuss it. He told her that she was now his official bride, so it was only natural that she would accompany him. Right now, they are the most talked about couple in the world. People want to see them together and they should give it to them. Lala felt uncomfortable because she did not like to attract unnecessary attention to herself. But she thought that she didn't understand him at all. What was he up to? Wasn't the story with the mistress all about getting alone without unnecessary suspicion? The outcome of this meeting could start a war. Any little thing that happened here could become a death sentence for tens of countries and hundreds of thousands of people, especially considering that the topic of the meeting was the epidemic. And now yesterday's incident will be added to this. She didn't know what was in this demon king's head. And why was everything like this? How can he still remain so calm? After some time, they finally arrived at their destination. When Lala looked out the window, she was very surprised by what was happening there. Dantalian smiled. He was ready for any difficulties. His past life had taught him a lot. Lala said that she should go out first. This is for his safety. Dantalian told her that this was not necessary. He walked out first and then offered her his hand. He said, why not show them how close they are right away? Lala was a pretty sweet girl, but due to the fact that she is a hybrid, she was always treated as a lower class. So it was difficult for her to get used to the way our hero treated her. She thanked him for giving her his hand, but she did not accept his hand and got off the carriage herself. Dantalian was surprised at this turn of events and then said that you won't get bored with her. Now Lala wanted to tell our hero about who is now in front of them. These two women were quite dangerous and powerful. Dantalian said that he knew who was in front of him, and he went forward first. He said that this was Her Highness Paimon and Her Highness Barbatos, while he bowed to them and said that they had not met them before. He said that he is the 71st Demon King and his name is Dantalian. Barbados angrily said that no low-ranking Demon King dared to communicate with her so frivolously. After all, she was already in a lousy mood. Dantalian bowed even lower to her and told her to forgive him. After all, he was completely new. And then such a powerful person appeared before his eyes that he could not even restrain the desire to speak to her. In a calm voice, he asked her to accept his sincere apology. If he really offended her with his actions, then he is very sorry. A demonic woman with white hair looked at our hero with some conflicting feelings. And then, she just turned away and said that she was tired of it all. Lala was very tense at this moment because she understood how easy it was to anger that demon queen. Dantalian looked after the white-haired demon queen who turned away from him. The demon queen herself thought that this several-ranking one collided with her and Paimon at the same time. And at the same time, he wasn't the least bit scared. Quite the contrary. Now, she was interested in this Dantalian. She walked near the same curvaceous lady with whom she had just quarreled and passed as if she had not noticed her. Paimon looked at her in surprise. She did not understand why she began to behave this way. Then she sighed and turned to our hero, saying that he was already in deep trouble. Well, don't let him be angry. This is the second time we've been shown that demon queens have some kind of strange heel, as if it's a strangely shaped hoof. She approached our hero and said that she had heard some rumors. Dantalian stood in front of her silently and waited for her to say everything she wanted to say. A sweet lady with a lush soul said that she believed that the girl behind him was the one. Lala replied that she was a servant of His Highness Dantalian. Her name was Lapis Lapis, and she bowed to the queen. The demon lady smiled and said that she shouldn't be so polite. She told Lapis to raise her head. She is the beloved of the Demon King. Raising her head, Paimon said that she had a very beautiful and youthful face. Dantalian knew that now was the time to intervene and compliment this woman. He turned to the woman with horns and said that she flatters her too much because who can compete in beauty with Paimon? The red-haired woman with horns said that Dantalian knows how to flatter. Then she looked at our hero and said that if you look closely, he's also quite handsome. Dantalian thanked her for the compliment, and she came very close to him. She said that a little later she would like to talk to him in a calmer atmosphere, but they would see each other again. Paimon turned around and began to walk away. Dantalian and Lala stood and watched her go. Dantalian smiled and thought that it was an interesting show this time. Lala looked at him with a very exhausted face. Dantalian asked, what was wrong with her? Lala told him that with Dantalian, 9 lives would not be enough. And finally, they entered inside that majestic castle. There were a lot of different interesting creatures there. These were elves, orcs, werewolves, goblins, and many other races. Dantalian looked around and said that it's not so bad here. And then suddenly he turned to his beloved and said, does she feel it? Lala replied that she felt it too. They had the feeling that all eyes around were focused on them. Dantalian said that apparently now there is nowhere to run. In this place, they are in the center of attention. Our hero noticed that they all pretended to not care and were minding their own business. But this was clearly not the case. They still did not take their eyes off them all the time. Are they really trying to say that they have nowhere to run? Dantalian felt like a rare animal that was put on display for everyone. And now they are all wondering whether this rare animal is really worthy of their attention. Or do they all look at him as nothing more than an appetizer for the evening? Dantalian turned to his power and said that he had a question for her. Which of the invitees is directly connected with the trading company? Lala replied that she did not know this. Information about the client is available only to those who concluded the deal and senior management. She then looked at the guest list and said that according to the invitation list, 40% of the guests belonged to Her Highness Paimon's faction that they had previously met with. Another 40% belongs to the faction of Her Highness Barbados. They have already met with her too. The remaining 20% belongs to His Highness Malbus. He is ranked 5th in the ranking. They occupy a neutral position. Dantalian said that now it is clear to him, and how many of them are dogs of the trading company. He also began to think that if he were a member of the company, what should he do? And suddenly the lights in the room went out. The candles were extinguished at one moment. Everyone found themselves in the dark. They did not understand what had happened. Some did not see anything. And then one bright blue light lit up and was the center of attention. Following this blue light, several more appeared and flew in the air. Then steps were heard from the corridor. Our heroes turned their attention to the direction from which the steps came. The man who approached said that he was grateful to them that this evening they visited Walpurgis night. He wanted to greet them. With their permission, he is the host of this meeting. This was the same Ivar Lodbrok, and he is the head of the Kunskas trading company. Dantalian finally noticed that same vampire. He understood that this was a very important person. He turned to his assistant and asked if it was really Ivar Lodbrok. She replied that everything is correct. In the world of demons, he is considered the richest creature, a true vampire, and the owner of the Kunsak company. And thanks to Dantalian, he now became her former boss, whom she had to betray. Dantalian thought that it was difficult for him to believe this. Has he really decided to show himself already? This is the same phenomenon as the main boss. Dantalian understood that they would have to interact in one way or another. At the same time, the vampire looked at the girl and thought that he would no longer wait until the moment when he could finally approach him. He looked at his former employee and subordinate Lapis. This pathetic hybrid dared to outwit him, and even she became the Demon King's lover, a frightening woman. But he thought that everything would end here for her. He would sit and watch her fall from her pedestal. After these thoughts, the vampire turned to everyone who was here and said that he was declaring Walpurgis night open. The white-haired demon woman said that this old man was too noisy, and she drank wine directly from the bottle. She asked him if he knew how long she had been traveling here, and if he would let her rest in peace. Only boredom emanated from this stinking old man. She also feels like vomiting. Let him better bring drinks. He's so golden that you want to kill him. Dantalian looked at this with interest. It looked like Barbatos had gotten down to business. He approached her and said that he understood her feelings. The demonic woman answered him. Will he really contradict her? The vampire bowed his head before her and said that he would not dare to do this. The vampire then noticed the clicking of the other demonic woman's heels. She said that Barbatos should assess the situation before speaking. She also said that she was ashamed at the thought that they were of the same race. She said that Ivar specially prepared this place for them. The white-haired demoness drank this with the last drop of wine, and from that bottle called the red-haired demoness, a damned harlot. After she finished that bottle of wine, she immediately threw this bottle right at the feet of her interlocutor. The bottle broke, and the fragments flew in different directions. Paimon remained silent. Barbatos again began to be rude to her interlocutor and told her to go home to her centaur and stop being an eyesore to people. Paimon said how sad this is. Not only will she come out like a child, she also has the brains of a child. What a poor thing she is. Paimon said that among adults there is such a thing as etiquette, although she has no way of knowing about it. Barbatos was very angry when they called her a child. She was already ready to fight. Paimon asked her interlocutor, "Is she really angry? What happened?" Anger grew between them. They almost caught fire from how nervous they were. But suddenly someone intervened in their conversation and ordered them to calm down. It was a rather tall demonic man who said that this concerns both of them. They should shut up. It was the demon king of severity and fortitude named Malbus. He was in 5th place. Then the demonic women fell silent and turned away from each other. The tall and bald demon turned to Lord Ivar and asked for his forgiveness, and now he can begin. Lodbrok thought that His Highness Malbus acted exactly as he expected. And so all the actors are in their places. Meanwhile, Lala noticed that for some reason our hero's hands were shaking. But there was a wide smile on his face, while he seemed to be worried or impatiently enduring something. Ivar said that he was glad to see them all this evening, and that they would allow him to begin the Walpurgisnacht meeting. Dantalian stood and looked at all these powerful demons. He understood all their mighty power. Under such circumstances, he, who is at the very bottom of the food chain, will be torn apart in an instant. Once he makes a mistake and he is finished, then our hero begins to think about other things. In Ivar's place, it was the first time that he had secured the support of one, if not all, of the higher demon kings. And probably all the meeting participants are already on Ivar's side. All they have to do is take the seats prepared for them and enjoy the spectacle. Our hero understood that something was wrong here. Something seemed wrong to him. Paimon addressed everyone and said that before they started talking about what to do with the infection, She would like to raise one more topic, Ivar asked. Her Highness Paimon. What did she want to talk about and what happened? Everyone was wondering what she wanted to say. The demonic man also told her to speak. And finally, Paimon said that she believes that no one here knows about this yet. But in the morning, her people discovered the body of the 72nd Demon King Andromarius. And his body was torn to pieces. It was a horrifying sight. She also managed to obtain complete information about this case. As it turned out, Andromarius was killed purposefully. Everyone who was here was horrified. Dantalian and Lapis understood that now they would begin to understand this issue. The bald demonic man turned to the red-haired lady and asked if this was true. She replied that all this is true. She has strong evidence. Then my interlocutor said that in this case she knows who the killer is. She replied that she knew. Then, unexpectedly for everyone, she said that the killer was the citizens of Nibelheim. Everyone was very surprised. They were no longer civilians who killed one of the demon kings. However, that's not all. Paimon said that it turned out that their actions were cleverly manipulated. No one planned the death of Andromarius at the hands of other people. And this nobody is now among them. All this time she kept the intrigue. Lala was very tense at that moment. She understood that her life could end right now. Dantalian sensed that she was worried and told her not to panic. It's obvious that Paimon wants to crush him in front of the entire company at this meeting. Otherwise, there would be no need for her to give this pretentious speech. Dantalian thought that 9 out of 10 that Paimon is one with the trading company, and they know everything about yesterday. And when they found out about everything, he ended up there by chance. He didn't understand when they started watching him. Our hero tried to put all the puzzles in his head. Perhaps they were there from the very beginning. If this is all so, then there is one ambiguity. Where were they looking? And suddenly Paimon looked at our hero, and he tensed at that moment. Dantalian finally realized that everything became clear to him. That's it. Ivar turned to Her Highness Paimon and asked who was manipulating people. The demonic woman said that the one who controlled the hearts of people and provoked the murder of the Demon King was the 71st Demon King Dantalian. And she pointed directly at our hero, denouncing him right in front of everyone. Everyone immediately turned their attention to Dantalian and Lapis. Dantalian stood silently in the center of attention. Next to him stood his beloved, who was very tense. The guests who learned that the Demon King killed the Demon King were shocked. They thought it was terrible. Ivar asked them all to remain calm. He saw the panic of people and told them to calm down. The bald Demon King turned to Paimon and told her to repeat it again. If her words are true, then this could shake the entire empty demon world. He asked again if her story was true. She bowed to that man and said that everything was true. She swears to him that her words are the pure truth. And besides, she officially accuses the Demon King Dantalian and wants to hold a meeting on this topic. Meanwhile, the vampire was very happy, thinking that preparatory witnesses were already waiting outside, and he could not justify himself. The bald demon said that in this case, does His Highness Dantalian have anything to say in his defense? Everyone's eyes were glued to our hero. It was a very exciting moment, especially for Lala, who did not understand what would happen next. Dantalian replied that he had nothing to object to. Everything was exactly as Her Highness Paimon said. But they didn't expect him to agree so quickly. They thought he would resist. They turned to him in surprise and wanted to know the details. Dantalian said that he was the one behind the murder of Andromarius. But he said this for a reason. The scattered pieces of the puzzle came together into a single whole. The motive of the trading company is clear. They want to strengthen relations with Paimon using the death of Andromarius as a reason. They will get rid of Dantalian and take all the black grass for themselves. They know all the details of the story, but yesterday's story was just a coincidence. Dantalian met Andromarius completely by accident. How did they find out everything so quickly? If you think about it, then everything becomes clear. They were following him from the very beginning. The only spy could be the one who suddenly disappeared yesterday, one of the Berber sisters, Beatrice. But why she spied on him is not even the point, since they were in cahoots with Paimon from the very beginning. He was thinking about why all these behind-the-scenes games are so much easier to use force. Especially when their opponent is one of the weakest demon kings, why don't they attack? Well, if they cannot do this, they were not lazy and organized this meeting, then they cannot do without Walpurgis Night. It seems that this is the answer. Paimon herself told him everything. From the moment he arrived here, they kept an eye on him. Dantalian directly felt as if they were looking through him. This is where this unpleasant feeling comes from, so who were they really looking at? From their point of view, it is impossible to foresee the onset of the plague. Naturally, they believe that someone deliberately caused it. Then you need to find out who it was. The first thing that comes to mind is the one Paimon has been focusing her attention on all the time. black magician and goddess of disease, queen of demons named Barbatos. Ivar and Paimon came to the conclusion that it was Barbatos who was behind this whole plague story, in which case everything makes sense for them. For them, Dantalion became just a puppet of Barbatos, and they followed him to get evidence of their connection with her. If she tried to apply force, Barbatos would go to war against them. That's why they really needed to gather here, as many high-ranking officials as possible. They must have decided that as soon as they accused him, he would also begin to repent with apologies and reveal all his cards. And in a place where all the highest nobility of demons is gathered, Barbatos can only deny that she is in any way connected with him, which means she won't be able to help either. All that remains is to recognize his epidemic, after which they will be able to take all his goods with a clear conscience. Dantalion thought that this was very smart on Ivar's part. Dantalion even respected him. Ivar is different from those he encountered before. To be honest, he is head and shoulders above all of them combined. Well, this infuriates our hero very much after all. He is now the king of demons, and it is not so easy to outwit him. He thought that if their goal is Barbatos, then she cannot be at the same time with them. But what about Malbus? He usually doesn't interfere because he is a noble demon king. He would not do this and stoop to dirty intrigues, but would go to Barbatos to clarify everything. So only these two are in cahoots, a vampire named Ivar and a demoness named Paimon. They want to start a fight with him. Dantalion understood that he couldn't defeat two of them. But still, they will see that they are all willing to dance to their tune. It took us a while, but Dantalion put all the puzzles together in her head pretty quickly. And finally Ivar said, "What does this mean that Dantalion recognizes all the words of Her Highness Paimon?" Dantalion absolutely said without any doubt that this is exactly what he said, and then asked, "Do they have any problems with this?" Ivar replied that they didn't have any problems with it, but he didn't understand what the hell he was thinking about. Dantalion replied that he still had something to say about this, of course, so if they would allow a hearing to be held, he would like to say something. Ivar said that let him speak now. He himself was wondering what he would say now. Dantalion seemed to remember something else and said that he would like to say something else first. He himself thought in his head that Ivar was behaving like the very personification of honesty, and he himself settled down in a warm place and watched the unfolding farce. Dantalion to throw Ivar off his throne, he is like an eyesore. And so our hero turned to His Highness Malbus. He said that conflicts between demon kings should be resolved by the same Lemon King, isn't he right? Of all those present, it is Malbus who has the highest rank. Therefore, Dantalion would like to turn to him with a request to act as a judge in this dispute. Malbus turned to Ivar and said that he was sure that this incident was a heavy burden for him, and would he allow him to take it upon himself? Naturally, the vampire could not contradict that demon king, and he agreed. But he didn't like it. He was tense at that moment. Malbus also asked Mrs. Paimon if she had any objection. She bowed her head and said that she had no objections and he could do as he wished. Bald Demon then said that as the fifth demon king, he takes full responsibility for this matter. First of all, he turned to our hero and said that as an accused he has every right to try to prove his innocence. Let him come forward and not be shy. Dantalion smiled and thought that things were starting to move. He turned to his beloved and said that she understands where everything is going. She replied that she understood everything. He should only give her an order. Dantalion said that it is good that she understands, then let her just watch and wait for his signal. She felt very strong tension, and thought that even in such a situation he was smiling. Dantalion looked at Paimon and thought in his head that now they will dance with her. Paimon stood opposite our hero a few meters away from him. She said she wanted to take the opportunity to express her gratitude for his offer of a hearing. Dantalion answered her and said that he himself was eager to talk with Her Majesty Paimon. Malbus and Barbatos watched all this. Our hero understood that all this looked like a medieval duel. Dantalion wanted to fight Paimon until one of them died. Malbus turned to everyone and said that they were starting the hearing. Both sides would express their point of view. And then they will take a vote and decide whether the accused is guilty or not. And then asked if everyone agrees. Dantalion understood that now there would be a vote. This is the thinking of powerful people. But according to Lal, 40% of those present belong to the Paimon faction. And to tell the truth, Dantalion said to himself that he is a weakling in terms of physical strength. His only weapon now is his system, which has failed him more than once. He also has a skill called Apostles of Aphrodite. In the Dantalion dungeon, he had already used this skill, but then he reached the maximum level. And after he tried this skill, he dropped to the first level. Now he only has information about the level of sympathy. But this is quite enough. Dantalion was already ready to start the battle. It was like chess. The bald demon turned to Paimon and said that he was ready to begin. She could interrogate Dantalion. The horned lady thanked him and said that she needed to clarify something. Yesterday, he was in Braheim Square, and even knowing that his opponent was the Demon King, he still provoked people to kill him. Dantalion did not hide this at all and said that everything was correct. She was absolutely right. But to be completely precise, although they most likely already knew this, there was one more thing. Before pushing people to kill, he cut Andermaritz's eyes with a knife. When they heard this detail, they were even more surprised. Everyone was puzzled by the fact that he had not heard of the general law. Dantalion said that even if people could not finish him off, he would personally rip out the bastard's heart and cut off his head. And it doesn't matter to him at all whether he is a demon king or not. Such words surprised people more and more. They didn't understand why he was saying that and why he needed it. Lala was as tense as possible at that moment. Dantalion noticed that the level of sympathy of the people around him decreased after these words. Ivar watched all this and thought that this was coming to an end. Dantalion noticed that the Demon Queen Paimon's sympathy level had decreased by 100 points. She asked him, "How can he call the Demon King a bastard? He should be more careful what he says." Dantalion answered her that, unfortunately, he was not going to take back his words. He would repeat this as many times as necessary. That Demon King was a disgusting piece of trash who deserved to die. Dantalion defiantly raised his hand up and shouted that this bastard had to die sooner or later. Everyone stood in bewilderment. They all had a negative attitude towards our hero after such words. They didn't understand. Was he crazy? And again, the level of sympathy among those around me began to decrease more and more. Paimon said that Dantalion talks a lot. After all, Andromarius was one of them. Dantalion asked her for forgiveness, he said, but he did not agree with her. This bastard had nothing in common with them. He was a disgrace to their entire race. What difference does it make whether he killed him or not? The devils in hell have been waiting for this scum for a long time. Dantalion simply sent them their well-deserved prize, and seeing how they defend this garbage makes him want to puke, to be honest. Dantalion turned to his interlocutor. She was somehow tense at that moment. Paimon became very angry and asked how dare he insult her. She demanded that he immediately apologize to her. People understood that this would not end well. Dantalion noticed that the level of sympathy of everyone around him had decreased very much. Also, the sympathy level of the Demon King named Malbus decreased by 100 points. He said that representatives of society were gathered here. Paimon is right. Dantalion should choose his expression carefully. Dantalion said that he was asking for forgiveness. He could not restrain himself. Dantalion thought that the first stage had been completed. His goal was not them. Dantalion looked at Paimon and thought that he seemed to be succeeding in pissing her off. And it seems that everything worked. Because from the very beginning his goal was the Demon Queen, named Barbatos. To win, you need to get a majority of votes and 40% of the Paimon faction gathered here, 20% from the Malbus faction, and 40% from the Barbatos faction. In other words, he needs to win Barbatos over to his side. That is why our hero did everything in such a way that all his answers were aimed at pissing her off. He needed to impress Barbatos, who was very hostile towards Barbatos. She, more than anyone, wanted to touch Paimon's nerves. And our hero will help her with this. And now it's time to move on to the decisive battle with Paimon. Dantalion asked Her Majesty Paimon for forgiveness. She was very angry. He asked her to forgive him for his rudeness, and he would also like to ask for forgiveness from everyone present. Everyone was very surprised. They didn't understand because he had just said such terrible words. Is he really repenting now? Dantalion said that with his words he tried to show respect to them. And as they see his inexperience is showing, he does not know how to control himself at all. Among the Demon Kings, he ranks 71st. He has no titles or achievements. He is like a baby compared to them. But even someone like him knows that one should not mock the old and infirm. He would never kill a child for not showing him respect. Everyone was intrigued by what he would say now. The judge asked our hero, what was he trying to say? Dantalion asked them if they don't know that Andromarius killed about 54 civilians in Nibelheim. Among them were 12 children, and he killed a child who was not even 10 years old. In a drunken stupor, he began to beat his horse with a whip until it died. And one couple claimed that he raped their daughter. The poor girl's body was found in the sewer. The parents were inconsolable. Taking into account non-fatal outcomes, a total of 327 city residents suffered at his hands. These are only known cases. It turns out that not everyone knew about this. Paimon was tense at that moment. Malbus to our hero the question, is this really true? Dantalion replied that all this was true. His subordinate personally investigated this matter. In fact, Lala now felt fear, and it was time to support her master. Dantalian decided to play it safe and sent Lal in the morning so that she could find out more about Ander Marius's villainy. Lucky that he was really that bastard. Although he embellished it a little, the dead still would not be able to dispute his words. Dantalian said that yesterday he heard a cry for help and immediately went to the call. Then he saw the poor old man and the 72nd Demon King. Ander Marius began to shout at our hero why he was staring at him, after which he began to approach him and even managed to swing his hand. But he also realized that the Demon King was also standing in front of him. So there was no room. He started beating his beloved. It was terrible. Ander Marius hit her in the stomach, and when she tried to get up, he continued to beat her. He beat her again and again. It was a terrible sight that could not just be left behind. Dantalian turned to His Majesty and said that how could he have acted differently in such a situation? After all, his beloved was brutally beaten right in front of his eyes. Do they really want to say that he had to watch this in silence? Of course, this explains a lot, and that's why Paimon didn't know what to say in this situation. Of all the 72 kings, she was the one who showed the most sympathy for people. Perhaps, unlike Ivar, she really cares about the people affected by the plague. And she also wants to punish him and Barbados because she considers them the culprits, and in her eyes, they are sinners. Her sense of justice is indeed admirable, but this sympathy turned into weakness, and her weapon became a double-edged sword, and now it was time for a public execution. Dantalian replied that he would say it again. That bastard had no right to call himself a demon king. If our hero had left him alive, the number of victims would have only continued to grow. Should they turn a blind eye to such things? He ruined so many innocent lives, don't they agree with him? Dantalian asked whether this scum was worthy of his life being spared. Dantalian began to approach His Highness Paimon and asked whether such scum was worthy of being considered their kin. Just one rotting piece of garbage can ruin the entire reputation of the Demon Kings with its behavior. Does she still intend to protect him? Here and now, he asked her to answer his question. She thought about how it happened. Everything should have been different. But she would not allow him to desecrate her reputation. Suddenly, popping noises were heard. Everyone turned their attention to whoever did it. It was the same white-haired demoness. She laughed and said that everything was right. She said that the 71st was well done, and thanked him for destroying this worm that allowed them. She looked around and loudly asked if anyone disagreed with her. Those around him had conflicting feelings. They were now very carefully choosing who to believe. Lala was also very surprised. She didn't understand what the hell was going on. The red-haired demoness was now very humiliated, and they were laughing at her. She was thinking about how she could save this situation to her advantage. The demoness with white hair laughed and said that Ander Marius was a very resourceful beast. He was always hiding from her. Well, finally someone got rid of this piece of obscenity, and she thanked our hero with all her heart. Seeing how silent people were, she asked, "Do they really want to stand up for the 72nd Demon King?" At this moment, everyone was very scared. No one dared to contradict this powerful woman, so they started clapping their hands to support her. Then the white-haired demoness smiled and said that they were doing well. Today is a sacred day. I wonder what will happen if people find out that someone stood up for this scumbag, and also on Walpurgis night. She continued to defiantly say that because of this, they would all be discussed and laughed at. At the same time, a vampire named Ivar was simply burning with rage. He realized that everything had not gone according to plan. People began to support Barbados. They clapped their hands. Also, the white-haired demoness turned to our hero and said that now Nibelheim is certain. He protected his beloved despite the prohibitions and got rid of the local troublemaker. Barbados spoke in such a way that according to her, our hero was a real hero. She also laughed loudly and said that the Demon King is a hero. This is amazing. She turned to Paimon and asked her if she didn't agree with her. Paimon was very angry. She stood and was silent, thinking that everyone would stop doing this. Why are they all applauding? Her anger grew more and more. She wanted them to stop. Dantalian broke the law. She thought that it shouldn't be like this. People clapped louder and louder. And finally, the most important Demon King turned to everyone with a cry so that everyone would shut up. He said that with their applause they disrupt their meetings. He will not tolerate this anymore. The white-haired demoness calmed down a little and said that let it be as he says, but let everyone know that her admiration was sincere at that moment. Among the lower demon kings of these nobodies, someone worthwhile had finally appeared. That is why she is not going to hide anything. She always says everything straight. The judge listened to her and turned to Paimon. Ask her if she said everything she wanted? But she said that that's not all. She wanted to say something else. The judge asked, "What's the matter? Does she have anything else to say?" The red-haired demoness said that she was not finished yet. She still had to interrogate Dantalian. The bald demon king said that he has known Paimon for more than 500 years, they know everything about each other, and therefore he cannot understand how she can protect Andromarius. All her life she had looked at people like him with contempt. At that moment she panicked very much. She felt anxiety inside herself. The situation did not go according to plan. Looking at the white-striped demoness, she didn't understand for some reason she was smiling. What was wrong with her face? What bothered her most was that Barbados was smiling. Then she looked at our hero. She thought that they planned all this, they are real evil. And so she knelt before His Majesty Malbus. And then she asked him to give her one last chance. She still hoped to rectify this situation. Malbus told her that she should do as she sees fit. Dantalion understood what she would do. Thus, she is not one of those who give up right away. He looked at his beloved and then thought it was time to give her a signal. He looked over his shoulder at her and gave her a thumbs up behind his back. She realized that this was a signal and immediately turned around and began to walk somewhere. But the crowd didn't even notice that she was going somewhere. Everyone was too focused on the demon kings. Dantalion stood opposite the enraged horned woman. She turned to the dear guests of Walpurgis, and she said that she had hidden something from them. They must know that they are all here because of the plague. The virus that appeared suddenly and has already spread throughout the continent has killed many people and the number of deaths continues to grow. However, the truth is that someone deliberately released this disease into the world. Everyone was again very intrigued by what she would say next. Ivar thought that now everything should work out for them. She continued talking and said that a criminal was behind the spread of the plague. And then she shouted that this criminal was Dantalion and pointed at him with her hand. Dantalion was calm at this moment. He understood that she was still using this trump card in her sleeve. The plague that had already spread throughout the continent was released into their world. Dantalion thought that she still decided to make this move. Now it's clear. He thought that the bastard he killed was just a snack. He looked at the vampire and thought that she had become the main dish. The bald demon looked at her and asked if she had any solid evidence to make such accusations. She replied that she had evidence. Ivar thought that Paimon was great. It looks like she was able to regain her composure. Now victory will definitely be theirs. Paimon again addressed everyone present and said that this plague had already claimed many lives, both people and demons. But we must not lose hope. There is still a cure, and this plant is called blackgrass. It is able to cure this plague. It has a miraculous effect and can instantly suppress the disease. But let me guess, who was the first to discover this herb? She then said that they thought correctly, it was Dantalion. And oddly enough, before this very epidemic, he bought up all the available reserves on the continent. Those present were very surprised by this turn of events. Is this really his work? She said that the only thing she didn't understand was that Dantalion not only knew when the epidemic would break out. Well, he knew how to treat her, which means only one. He knew what would happen next and was prepared. This is the first time in the history of the continent that such an epidemic has occurred, and blackgrass has not been used as a medicine. She asked if there was a logical explanation for this, and the answer is obvious. Dantalion is the creator of the plague, and this is exactly what they accused him of, trying to humiliate him in the eyes of other people. Naturally, the people who listened to this were very surprised. Is this really possible? She then said that Dantalion used the services of a consultant from the Kunsk trading company. It was this consultant who he instructed to buy all the medicine. And finally, she asked him, why did he need so much black grass? It will be useless to try to justify yourself because all the facts are already obvious. The bald demon who acted as a judge turned to Ivar and asked if Paimon was right. The gray-haired vampire answered without delay that everything is true. Everything, as she said, it's all true. He also said that with the permission of Mr. Malbus, he will show where the lies are and where the truth is. He does not dare to make mistakes in his judgment. However, if this is his will, then it is Ivar who will immediately provide all the necessary evidence. Malbus turned to him and asked, does he really want to say that he has everything ready? Ivar replied that everything was exactly like that. Now he looked at our hero and smiled. He thought that there was nowhere to run. He changed his mind about the fact that he had already won. Now he would simply crush his opponent. But suddenly someone interrupted them and said that he was asking for forgiveness for interrupting the sacred Walpurgis night. Everyone noticed who it was. It was some man in armor. Malbus was indignant and asked, what's the matter? How can they break in the middle of a meeting? This man in armor got down on one knee and said that the fact is that a branch of the Kunz company had just been attacked by unknown persons. The vampire was furious at what he heard. He asked, is this really true? How to understand it? The man in armor said that, based on the information received, the guards heard an explosion and then discovered smoke coming from the upper floors of the main department. The vampire was very scared. His entire collection is kept there. By the way, this is a manhua called Dungeon Defense. He bowed to His Highness Malbus and asked for his forgiveness. He said that he would have to leave. Malbus turned to Mr. Ivar and told him to raise his head. He understands his situation, but he can only give him 15 minutes, even taking into account all the circumstances. This meeting is sacred, and asked, does he understand it? Ivar replied that he understood everything, and he was very grateful for such generosity. Then the vampire quickly stood up and began to push everyone who tried to get in his way so that they would get out of the way. Barbados laughed and said that it was funny. What a face he made, as if he had seen a ghost. Dantalian turned around and began to walk away somewhere. A horned woman with red hair shouted for him to stop. Dantalian smiled. I thought about how Paimon was panicking after all. There is a time for everything. Dantalian looked at his interlocutor and said that he just wanted to get some fresh air, and he was not going to run away. So she may be calm, but that was just part of his plan. He followed Ivar. At that moment, he just pushed one of the ladies present and our hero supported her, preventing her from falling. Paimon was furious. Her eyes turned red and she almost growled. A few moments later, Ivar had already reached his destination and was immediately discovered by the goblin. Ivar began to ask him what happened here. The goblin replied that he himself did not understand anything. Ivar replied that now there is no time to understand this. It is necessary to immediately gather everyone who is free and send them to the main headquarters. The goblin asked his master where he would go. Ivar replied that he would go to the observation area to see the headquarters from there. The vampire was furious. He didn't understand who had the courage to do this. Did they really take advantage of Walpurgis night and also find a weak spot in their defense? He was also worried about what he should do if his collection was damaged. He walked up the steps and thought that in this guise it was very difficult for him to climb the stairs. As soon as the meeting was over, he would move into a doll. All this time he had a stream of thoughts that this is outrageous. Whoever it is will make him pay. He will find and arrange a bloody feast. When he looked at his castle, he saw that there was indeed smoke there. But before Ivar came here, our hero was already there, who turned to him and said that he knew that he would come here. Dantalian said that he believes that with his strength, he will be able to see his piece from such a distance without any problems. Ivar was very angry and didn't understand what was happening. Why the hell did he forget here? Well, to understand what happened, we should go back 10 minutes. One of the witches asked if there was another signal. Events take place in the sky above the main branch of the Kunst company. One of the girls asked the other, are they really ready to do this? The blonde witch said that they must do this. Such was the request of His Majesty Dantalian. As it turned out, back in the city, our hero turned to the Berber sisters and said that he had one request for them. He told them his plan, and then they learned that they would need to attack Kunst's company. They asked whether he was saying this seriously, because it would be very dangerous to do such a thing. Dantalian replied that he was absolutely serious, and he thought that they themselves were no less interested in this than he was. The blonde witch asked him what he meant. Dantalian replied that most likely Beatrice was no longer alive and was under the control of a vampire. And then the witch thought that if His Majesty Dantalian did not lie, then Ivar must pay for his atrocities. Her interlocutor, who was sitting next to her on a broom, asked how they would know whether he had collected it or not. She replied that sooner or later the truth will be revealed. There is no need to be afraid. Although Dantalian is ranked first in the ranking, he is still the king of demons, which means his request is undeniable. And if we believe his words, they will soon be able to find Beatrice. And after some time, the sisters saw fireworks. This was the signal. This signal was sent from Lal. She too followed the instructions of her master. Then, one of the witches turned to her sisters and said that they all remembered what to do. They created a huge pentagram in the sky and were already preparing to attack. And so they got down to business, panic grew, and Ivar now met our hero one-on-one. The vampire understood that if Dantalian knew that he would come, then it was his doing. When I started to think about where Barbados was, she wasn't here. She was still at the meeting. He tried to calm himself down and thought that this was just a pathetic game. Dantalian turned to his interlocutor and said that there was no need to worry. It was only him and Dantalian. He came closer to the gray-haired vampire and said that they had something to talk about. The vampire understood that this was all for a reason. What was he planning? What would they talk about? Ivar thinks, but is it really Dantalian who attacked his company? Dantalian smiled and said with complete confidence that everything was correct. It was he who gave the order. The vampire was furious, but our hero said that he didn't need to worry. He just needed a reason to talk to Ivar. And he never intended to destroy Kunsk, but he needed to make some noise. If he had not done this, he would not have had the opportunity to be alone with the vampire. Dantalian. Therefore, I had to play a little trick, so let him forgive him. The vampire could barely contain his emotions. He thought that this little rat was taking him for an idiot. He thought about what he really wanted, but it doesn't matter. Now he's finished anyway. In his head, he thought that damn him. But Ivar wouldn't leave a wet spot behind him. And so the vampire turned to our hero and said that it doesn't matter what he says, everything will remain as it is. All he needs is to present the available evidence to His Majesty Malbus and the members of the assembly. Dantalion noted that this was their first meeting. What a pity that they were on opposite sides of the barricades. The vampire replied that this was so, and he agreed with him. It's a pity. Dantalion asked, does he agree with him? Then Mr. Ivar must understand what Dantalion feels now? The vampire was angry and thought about what kind of nonsense this impudent brat was talking about. Ivar said that he is afraid that the old man does not understand what thoughts are visiting His Highness. Dantalion looked at his interlocutor, who called himself an old man and said that he knew better. And finally, our hero said that he wanted to invite his interlocutor to become his subordinate. The vampire was dumbfounded by such a proposal. What did this fool blurt out now? Let him be the demon king, but for Ivar to serve the one who occupies 71st place? The vampire turned to our hero and asked, is this a joke? Dantalion, with a smile on his face, said that he was not joking at all. Everything was completely serious. Dantalion said that he would say it again. He asked Ivar Lodbrok if he wanted to become his subordinate. Naturally, the vampire laughed loudly. He even slapped himself in the face from laughter. Ivar laughed loudly, and our hero also began to laugh with them. They laughed there like madmen, as if they both had mental problems. Ivar shouted with anger that Dantalion must be mocking him. A bright glow emanated from the vampire. Dantalion said that it seemed like he had finally shown his true nature. Dantalion was also going to show his true nature at this moment, because this was just his original appearance as a demon. Dantalion's words made Ivar very angry. The vampire shouted that this little brat should stop clowning around. The vampire was already furious. An incredibly creepy aura emanated from him. It seemed that he was about to turn into a terrible bat. Dantalion answered him that it was time to finally settle all the issues between them. Then he turned to someone behind him and said that she could come out. Imagine the vampire's surprise when he saw Lapis come here. Our hero asked the vampire if he was glad to meet her. The vampire shouted that he had been waiting for this for a very long time. She had broken the rules of their company. In the name of the greatness of Kunsk, he must punish her as a traitor. She must regret that she set him up. The girl replied that the end determines the means. This is what she learned from him, His Majesty. Dantalion promised her that he would provide her with a place in the front row. The girl started walking forward and said that thanks to him, a stunning view awaited her. So she betrayed the trading company and does not regret this decision one bit. Dantalion smiled and said that this is how things are with them. The vampire was so angry that he almost broke the cane that he was holding in his hand. He said that they were already finished. After this meeting, they will lose absolutely everything. The black grass will become his main evidence. I just laughed at him in response, and the vampire asked what was so funny. Didn't he really understand the situation he was in? Dantalion said that he apologized for being distracted, and he was very worried about the vampire, and then he slowly took something out of his pocket. It was some kind of glowing hair. The vampire looked in bewilderment at what this demon was showing him. At first, the girl did not understand what these glowing threads were. Was this really what she thought? The demon said that he was very worried about the vampire's body, but not about the one he was in now, but about the one that was kept far, far away in the cold northern lands. In the depths of the ice cave, Dantalion was now talking about his real body, and this body was quite unexpected for all of us. He smiled and said that he really hoped that nothing would happen to this body. The vampire was shocked by this turn of events. He did not understand how this demon knew. Dantalion recalled that Ivar Lothbrok is actually a vampire princess in love with the main character. But the Demon King betrayed her, after which she sealed her real body in the ice coffin so that no one could use her again, and she moved her soul between dolls. I was very surprised when I met her for the first time, because she looked completely different when she was in this guise. Dantalion told the vampire that he shouldn't worry so much. The place is teeming with dangerous monsters, and it would be bad if they bit off Sleeping Beauty's arm or leg, or for example, someone could give a special signal. And the poor thing is no disaster. The vampire absolutely did not understand how this demon could recognize his real body, because she did not tell anyone. In his hand is her hair. In fact, our hero simply decided to play it safe, and the hair he got was just what he needed. He simply pulled out a few hairs, and he didn't even expect such an effect. Now there remains the final touch. The girl who stood next to our hero did not understand what he was talking about. Judging by the vampire's reaction, the gentleman is not bluffing. Our hero repeated his offer again. He told the vampire to give up and join him, then everything would be fine. Now, Ivar did not understand at all how everything could have happened like this, because everything was under control. Well, the vampire thought that he would never serve this demon. It was impossible and he couldn't stand it. The vampire screamed loudly and began to turn into a bright purple mist. And then he quickly pounced on Lapis. Our hero did not have time to do anything at that moment. He only covered his face with his hands. The vampire grabbed the girl and put his sharp claws to her neck, telling our hero to stand still. If he takes even one step, he will kill her. The situation was, of course, quite unpleasant. The vampire was holding the succubus girl hostage. Our hero asked what the vampire was trying to achieve, and first of all, he shouted for our hero to shut up and not move. After all, he is absolutely serious. If he moves from his place, he will kill her immediately. He now said that he was offering a deal. He must immediately withdraw his people from his body, and only after that he would release Lapis. He wondered in his head whether Dantalion would do this, since the life of his beloved was in his hands. He thought that she was his weak spot. For her sake, he went against another demon king. He has no choice but to agree to his conditions. The vampire wanted to kill her first, but then his real body could shoot. He didn't want to admit it, but he had just released almost all of his magic. So he wouldn't be able to hold out for long, which meant he had no choice. But when he returns to his real body, he will definitely kill this demon. Dantalion didn't answer for a few seconds. The vampire waited for the demon to call his people away from his body. Dantalion did as a vampire did not expect. He said that if he wants to kill her, then let him kill her. He doesn't care. The vampire was in shock. He now did not understand what to do. Our hero smiled ominously and said that he did not care whether the girl died or not. Dantalion was absolutely calm. He said, "Does a vampire really call this a deal? Deals are made between equal parties, or if one of the parties is much stronger than the other." Dantalion said that he didn't think that the head of such a large company didn't know such basics. He was the first to shout and rage for him to shut up, because he really would kill her. Our hero shouted that he had started doing this and killed her. The vampire asked in surprise if Dantalion really agreed to this. Our hero looked at him absolutely calmly, as if he were an idiot. The girl was also silent and said nothing. And then suddenly she said that she agreed with it. She didn't mind sacrificing her life. These words caught the vampire by surprise. He didn't understand what was wrong with these two. Dantalion began to approach the vampire and told him to listen to him. He had miscalculated from the very beginning by making the assumption about the origin of the epidemic. He thought that Barbados created it, Lapis helped, and Dantalion was just a flunky. Our hero laughed and said that it looked like this stupid vampire had just realized how things really were. All this time, the main initiator was Dantalion, and the vampire made the wrong conclusions. He also said that he couldn't believe that his insignificant thirst for revenge had clouded his mind so much. The vampire fell to his knees, not understanding who was in front of him now. He understood that he would not be able to defeat him. Was it really the Demon King Dantalion standing in front of him from the wall? And so the vampire bowed before our hero, and Dantalion told him not to be so afraid. He would work for him, but this would not affect his previous activities in any way. Only sometimes you will have to carry out his orders. Of course, he has no right to refuse, otherwise he will kill his real body, and our hero tore your hair that he was holding in his hand. And now he began to order the vampire, telling him to listen carefully to his first order. He whispered something in the vampire's ear, and the vampire was all ready from this. Now that they've sorted that out, Dantalion thinks it's time for them to go back. And he also told you that he's not really connected to the plague, and he's counting on him. Meanwhile, everyone was waiting for the Demon King and the vampire to return. Time was up and they returned. Ivar came first, and the bald demon asked him how things were. He would like to continue Walpurgis night. The vampire answered with a trembling voice that the problem had already been solved. Barbados began to clap his hands with laughter and say, "What happened to this old man? Is he really unwell? And has he lost his last strength along with the castle?" The greater demon told Barbados to calm down. They all just had to wait for Dantalion. Our hero didn't keep us waiting long and said that he was here. He was absolutely calm and his appearance irritated many. The bald demon said that since everyone was already gathered, Walpurgis night could be resumed. The red-haired demoness realized that Dantalion had not run away after all. Our hero said that he just wanted to get some fresh air. The red-haired demoness shouted for Ivar to show everyone present the proof. But the vampire just stood there and remained silent. The horned woman told him to move. Why did he freeze in place? The vampire said in a quiet voice that he had no evidence. Then everyone was very surprised by this turn of events. His interlocutor did not understand why he was behaving like this now. The old man replied that he had no evidence from the very beginning, and all the words of Her Majesty Paimon were lies. No one really expected that he would start talking like that. Barbados was happy when she heard it. Paimon was furious and began to transform into her terrifying form. Her teeth became very sharp and she began to emit a terrifying aura. She screamed that it looked like the vampire wanted to die, and she would fulfill his wish right now. Paimon began to approach the one she wanted to tear to shreds, but the supreme demon kicked the ground and broke the floor. He shouted for Paimon to calm down and not to dare to violate the sacrament of Walpurgis night. The horned lady said that in that case, let them call Torker. He is her personal consultant in the company. Let them bring him to her. As soon as she said this, at that very moment the goblin asked the lady if she had called him. The vampire began to worry when he saw this goblin here. He thought that he might say something unnecessary. Dantalian didn't know what kind of goblin this was, and how could such a small servant help her in this situation? He was already sure that it was all over for Ivar and Paimon. The goblin looked at the vampire and thought that something was clearly wrong with him. He was clearly very worried. Paimon turned to the goblin and said that he himself told her that Dantalian was to blame for the spread of the plague, and there was no doubt about it. The goblin said that everything was exactly as he told her, and he did not take back his words. He claimed that Dantalian was behind the outbreak of the epidemic. However, he continued to speak and said that he had made it all up, and the vampire was very surprised when he heard this. The red-haired woman was furious. She didn't understand what this goblin was saying. It must have been Ivar who ordered him to say these words. The goblin said that no one had given such orders, and that he was the only one to blame for everything. The horned woman screamed at the goblin to tell them all the truth. He couldn't make such a stupid mistake. After all, they have known each other for a very long time. She knows him very well, and he is one of the most responsible and intelligent creatures she knows, and she asks him not as a client. And when I am a friend, who set all this up? The goblin replied that he was the only one to blame for everything. He wanted to get the black grass that His Majesty Dantalian owned, but he couldn't do something like that on his own. Therefore, to achieve his goals, he used Her Majesty Paimon and Lord Ivar. She didn't believe what she heard. She thought it was some kind of nonsense. The goblin said that he took advantage of the favor of Her Majesty, as well as the power of Lord Ivar. Even our hero did not expect such a turn of events from this goblin. Then the supreme demon got angry and said, did he really pursue his own selfish goals and deceive the demon king for this? And does he realize the gravity of his crime? The goblin replied that now that his entire plan had failed, he already knew what awaited him. He put his hand under his cloak and said that if Her Majesty Paimon was guilty of anything, it was only because she believed the words of an old fool. The goblin took out a knife and thought that he did this for Mr. Ivar. This is the last thing he can do for him, and he will sacrifice his life. And right in front of everyone, the goblin killed himself. No one really expected him to do that. Paimon didn't understand why Goblin did this. It couldn't be you. She trusted him. And why did he do this? She sat down on the ground and servants ran up to her, wanting to support her, asking if she was okay. Malbas, looking at this whole picture, told them to take her away. The servants immediately obeyed him and led the mistress into the room. Barbados laughed and said that this fool got what she deserved. It was a great sight. And she also wanted to make fun of the dead goblin. Malbas told her to shut up, and Dantalian walked up to the dead goblin and, looking at him, thought about how he had sacrificed himself and cleared Paimon and Ivar of all charges by making them look like victims in the eyes of the others. What a commendable determination that was. Dantalian placed his hand on his heart and mentally said that he sincerely respected Torker's courage. Malbas approached our hero and said that he assures him that he will force Paimon to compensate for all losses. This issue can be considered closed. Dantalian turned to the bald demon and said that there was no need for this. Lady Paimon was only a victim of deception. Torker is already dead and he has no right to force others to bear responsibility for his actions. Malbas was surprised by this decision of this demon and said that it was quite commendable. And his level of sympathy for our hero increased by 20 points. When the elder demon said that he respected his decision, the breadth of his soul will be talked about for a long time. There is no longer any need for voting. A lot has happened today, and Walpurgis night is officially over. Then the chief demon said that he invited everyone present to enjoy the local alcohol until dawn came. Barbados screamed that the fun was finally about to begin. She was not going to refuse and was ready to drink everything there was. And she also called our hero so that he would drink with her. Dantalian was not happy that she called him to her because he understood that she could cause him problems. After all these events, everyone continued to celebrate that night and had fun, despite what happened. Ivar took the body of the dead goblin and said that they lost. He is sincerely sorry for this. He really hopes that Torker will forgive him, and one day he will repay the debt. Dantalian. After some time went out onto the balcony to breathe some fresh air. He felt a little sick. After all, before this, Barbados poured a lot of drink into him, but he could no longer drink. Dantalian didn't understand how this little demoness could drink so much alcohol on her own. Are all demon kings like this? He felt like he was drunk and began to think about some of the things that had happened to him. Since he came to this world, a lot has happened. He remembered his father and thought that he had succeeded and had arranged a good life for himself in this world. While he was thinking about this, Lapis came up to him and said that she knew he was here. Our hero said that, as expected from his bride, she knows him very well. The pink-haired girl said that today he acted thoughtlessly. Why did he spare Paimon? Isn't it better to get rid of the root of the problem? Dantalian said that he didn't want her to start lecturing him. He was tired and let her give him a little rest. She looked at him with a glassy gaze. Dantalian asked why she was looking at him like that. He was sure that Paimon would not cause him any problems. Then he came up to her and said that he was planning to do something that no one in this world had ever dreamed of. She didn't need to worry because he would fulfill his promise. He said that she would have an unforgettable view, and then on Yelitz he saw how she became inspired and agreed with him. Dantalian said that at first he thought that she would lecture him, but suddenly what they expected happened. She quickly grabbed him by the clothes and kissed him. Dantalian jumped away from her and asked what it was, and the girl replied that she knew his real face. Dantalian began to say that he made her his bride for the sake of achieving a goal, and for his own interests, he can leave her at any moment, as he did during the conversation with Ivar. The girl replied that she understood this and she believed in him, and she did something she had never done before. She smiled. Our hero thought that it seemed like he was seeing her smile for the first time. Then he hugged her and kissed her. Our hero thought about the fact that the past cannot be fixed. He recalled the terrible moments from his childhood life. When the mother attacked his sisters with a knife, the children huddled in a corner and cried bitterly. The little boy told his father that he should break up with this woman, begged him to do it. His father answered him that he couldn't leave her, after all. She was his mother. He should understand that. But the boy replied that she only wanted to kill his sisters because they were not hers. A little more and she would definitely kill them. The boy, with tears in his eyes, asked his father who he would choose, them or her. But the father replied that he chooses his mother because he loves her. When he said this, the boy saw some kind of demon in his father. The boy was very disappointed with what was happening because he had no one else to whom he could turn for help. The father told him that his son was always thinking about the bad. Couldn't he be at least a little more positive? The boy was very angry at that moment. He understood that his father was talking nonsense. He thought in his thoughts that he would not forgive any of them. And then suddenly we are shown the next scene where Lapis hits Dantalian in the face. She did this on the square in front of many people who were shocked by this girl's behavior. She said that she didn't expect His Highness to fall so low. Dantalian held his cheek, which was hurting. People are even more shocked that she raised her hand against her master and in front of a whole crowd. Doesn't she really understand what she's doing? Dantalian asked her if she understood what she had done, and she replied that she understood everything. Then our hero shouted that Lapis Lazuli was fired from that moment on. The following events take place 2 hours later. Everything took place on September 20th, 1505, according to the imperial calendar, in the residence of Admiral Nieberheim. Dantalian sat with Barbados and told her how he broke up with his fiancée, and then he asked her why she was here. The girl with white hair said that in the demon world, everyone is only talking about how the hottest couple broke up, and it's very funny, so she came to find out the details. Dantalian said that they broke up about 2 hours ago and rumors have already spread, but he is not in the mood to talk about it now. In general, he would not like to discuss this situation with anyone, but his interlocutor replied that he was very cold, but she was so nice that she personally came to hear the story of their little brother. She also said that usually mongrels like that girl with brain hair are killed, even if they just try to touch demons. She wanted to know what Dantalian did. Our hero told her not to stick her us into other people's love stories and let her leave here. She replied that he might not tell her, but she still liked him. And as the eldest, she was obliged to take care of her younger brother. And let him worry about me because the world is already full of women and he will quickly forget this mongrel. She told him that he was still very young. She had already lived in this world for 500 years and understood something about love affairs. If he did as she told him, then even better, the elves would want to tear off a piece of him, and he would not have to strain himself. Dantalian smiled and said that it was interesting. Barbados said that she would not advise him anything bad and let him tell her what happened. Dantalian wondered whether he should tell her anything and then said that half a month ago some old woman came to him, and she said that she was Lala's mother. Well, he heard that Lala had been an orphan all her life, So he asked her if she hadn't abandoned her daughter and run away. The old woman replied that she was expelled from the village immediately after Lapis was born. But not a single day passed when she did not think about her, and she searched for her all her life. And then rumors reached her that she might be here. Dantalian said that he understood what was being discussed and said that he would allow her to meet Lapis. Then the old woman with tears in her eyes began to thank our hero that he was so kind to her and that this was a great honor for her. After some time, Lapis came to the demons and said that he had received a letter. Dantalian said that she had come just in time and asked if she recognized this woman. The girl stood silently and looked at this woman, and our hero said that he also did not expect her to appear. The old woman started to approach her, trying to touch her, but Lapis was somehow very tense at that moment. Lapis clenched her fists as the older woman began to approach her. Our hero noticed the strange behavior of his beloved. Dantalian turned to the old woman and said that she definitely said that she was Lapis's mother. He then said that lying to the Demon King is punishable by death. If she came here, she should have been sure that this was her daughter, and the old woman said that she really was Lapis's mother. Dantalian came closer to her and asked her why she only started looking for her now. The old woman began to say that she had always wanted to see her. It was just that things were not easy for her, Dantalian said. That did she really mean that she was too busy? The older woman continued speaking and said that Lapis was just a child and could have gotten it all wrong. But now that was in the past, and she wanted them to become a family looking back. After listening to her, our hero suddenly hit the old woman in the face with all his might and said that it was up to her to decide what to do with her past. Wasn't she interested in hearing Lala's opinion? Did she really think that she would meet her daughter and she would immediately share her treasures with her? Dantalian said that Lala is a dear person to him, and he is not going to forgive those who want to harm her. Dantalian was about to take the sword and kill the old woman, but the pink-haired girl told him to stop. Our hero said that he sees how his beloved is angry at this old woman. He told this old woman that she remembered too late that she was a mother. Maybe she just decided to lie down on her own child. He swung his sword, but the girl stopped him and protected the old woman, telling him to stop. Dantalian asked why she was stopping him. Didn't she agree with him? Was she going to leave alive the man who brazenly destroyed her life? The girl said that it was not worth the effort of His Highness. Dantalian shouted that in that case they would take mercenaries. Lapis interrupted him and said that, His Highness, they don't know anything. And Lapis's sympathy level towards our hero dropped by 10 points. And Lapis Lazuli's current affection level for Dantalian is 18 points. Dantalian. Ask her why she is angry because he is doing this for her sake, but she did not listen to him and left the room. He told this whole story to his interlocutor and she listened in bewilderment about how this situation really looked. She asked, is he really completely crazy? She said that he didn't seem to understand what he had done. Dantalian said that a woman had come into my hands who had ruined Lapis's life, and he had acted wisely. Barbados told him that she expected that she would seem at least a little useful, but it seems that he is just crazy, and she just decided that he could be used for more than just pleasure. But he disappointed her. Can't you see in his eyes that he tried to kill her own mother? Dantalian. If a person deserves death, it is easier to kill him on the spot. Barbados said that she sympathizes with this mongrel named Lapis. In her place, she would have cut off Dantalian's hands herself. Our hero asked her whose side she was on, but Barbados continued to say that she wanted to know what happened next. This happened half a month ago, and after that something else happened, right? Barbados sat in such a way that she caught Dantalian's attention, and did not notice that he was looking at her somehow strangely. If he wants to look, then let him pay. Dantalian turned his gaze away and said that he was already very tired today, and for such conversations he needed to be in the mood, especially since he had been dumped 2 hours ago. Barbados answered him that let him admire if he wants to. Dantalian answered that in that case he would continue. He began to tell that time Lala brought a letter, and he gave this letter to his interlocutor. It was written that he was their next target, and in 10 days his castle would be attacked by 2,000 soldiers. Of course, the news is not the best after all. So many soldiers are going to attack his castle. Our hero's interlocutor replied that it looked like a threat. Dantalian replied that it was not a threat but rather a warning. Then the lady with white hair asked, what's the difference? Dantalian told her to look at this letter carefully. There are only 2 warnings, but many important details. Firstly, you wrote that he is the next target. This can be interpreted as meaning that the one who wrote this is not his enemy. This letter is written too softly for a threat. Something is wrong here. But who and why sent him this letter? Barbados said that it was an interesting idea. She wanted to hear the continuation. Dantalian said that the author of the letter was clearly someone from the upper class, There was not a single mistake in the letter. Judging by the slant of the letters, he could write with either his right or left hand. Barbados asked him where he found out about this. It's quite funny. Our hero answered that from a person's letters one can understand his way of life. The author of this letter clearly occupies some high position. Barbados said that she wanted to look at this letter again. She used her magic to levitate the letter to her. She looked closely at the letters. She did not understand how our hero was able to understand this. Dantalian answered her to look more closely. There is a comma between the 2 and the zeros. A common person would not waste time on a comma to write a warning, but the author of this letter is used to writing commas in numbers. For example, he often works with large sums of money. He has to communicate with a large number of people on a daily basis. Perhaps he is engaged in keeping accounting books or personally manages a large territory. Barbados watched our heroes with great interest and said that he was quite smart. Dantalian told her that it was too early to admire him because there were 5 more clues in the letter. But he won't tell anything else. It won't be interesting if he reveals all the secrets at once. Barbados asked if he was teasing her. What a sick fool. She asked that most likely the sender of this letter should be a merchant. Dantalian replied that he had come to such a conclusion. Then Barbados said that she wanted to figure everything out and find the one who wrote it. Dantalian asked her if she could really do it. Barbados asked who he thought she was. At that moment, she immediately used magic and something began to conjure with this piece of paper. She used some kind of spell called Thanatos' Regret and used her blood to command the letter to fly to the author of the letter. After this, the letter began to catch fire and completely burned with a blue flame, turning into dust. Then this dust began to transform into some other creature and eventually a bat appeared. Barbados grabbed the bat and said that he would find the one who wrote this letter and then immediately sent her a signal. Dantalian said that it was quite good, and then his interlocutor released the bat out the window. She was going to help him, and our hero said that he knew she was great. How long would it take to find her? If the incomparable Barbados took on the matter, then he thinks that this matter should not drag on for long. And his interlocutor got angry and said something if she was next to him, then he would have spent months looking for the one who wrote this letter, and he should be grateful that she is looking for the author. She also said that her magic does not fail, but is he confident in his conclusions? This is what they will check. Because he says that the merchant wrote the letter, Dantalian replied that this is just an assumption, and he has one friend who is a merchant. So if he is one of them, then they will quickly catch him. Barbados asked him, what will he do? Our hero replied that he had already said that he had a familiar friend who was a merchant, and he quickly called him to him. The following events take place on September 5th, 1505, according to the imperial calendar. In the trading company of Kunsk, Dantalian came to the vampire. He now said that he did not send any letters. It was not him. Dantalian said that he wanted to believe him, but Ivar was already trying to get rid of him. Ivar said that he no longer had any intention of harming His Highness, and he bowed before our hero. Dantalian said that he believed in his powers but not in him. The vampire asked how he could earn the Demon King's trust. Dantalian said that he only needed to fulfill a couple of his requests. The vampire asked what exactly he wanted. Dantalian said that he wanted to hire mercenaries first, but he only needed high-ranking mercenaries. In 2 days, he should have 3,000 people. The vampire understood that it would be very difficult, but he had no choice. The vampire asked with a trembling voice if he really needed to gather 3,000 of the best mercenaries in just 2 days. Dantalian asked him, couldn't he handle this task? The vampire replied that he could gather an army, but 2 days was too little time for such a task. Especially if he needs high-ranking mercenaries, he can handle them in 10 days or better in half a month. Dantalian said that he does not understand his interlocutor because there are a lot of mercenaries wandering around nearby. You just need to look around. Dantalian is talking about the soldiers of Nibelheim. He heard that there are about 4,000 soldiers there. And Ivar, in fact, is this city? Why can't he borrow them for a while? Ivar replied that in that case the city's defense would weaken. Nibelheim is the main trading city of the demon world. If he goes, then it will affect the entire demon world. In addition, the problem of the plague has not yet been solved. Dantalian said to his interlocutor in a menacing voice that Ivar's comfort was none of his business. What kind of look was that? Had he already forgotten that his beautiful body was at his mercy, and he showed off a tuft of light vampire hair? Ivar, seeing this hair, was surprised that Dantalian was holding it in his hands again, because he had already torn the previous strand of hair right before his eyes. He said that he did everything to me, as Dantalian told him. He went against Her Majesty Paimon, sacrificed one of the leaders of the trading board, all this to protect Dantalian. Our hero came closer to him and said that Ivar didn't swear allegiance to him only because of this, right? The Demon King spoke in a very ominous tone and said that the vampire must get on all fours, kneeling in front of him. The vampire quickly fell to his knees. He really didn't want to humiliate himself like that, but he had no choice. Dantalian said that now when he was on his knees, he should bow his head before him, and the vampire with a trembling body began to do so. He bowed before the Demon King. He felt very uncomfortable and it hurt in his soul to do this. To further humiliate him, Dantalian put his foot on the vampire's head and then said that he was a good boy. He also said that they had a very simple relationship, and after that he pressed his head to the floor even harder. He wanted to gain complete obedience and asked Ivar if he understood everything, because in exactly 2 days, he needed 3,000 soldiers. Ivar replied that he would do everything as the Demon King ordered him to do. Dantalian said that he was a good man, but he had one more request for him. You need to find out some information about one person, and you need to find out as much information as possible. He told Barbados all this, and she laughed and said that Dantalian was a real sadist. She could just see how that old man was writhing in pain. But what about searching for the author of the letter? Dantalian told her not to rush things. He didn't have much time before the attack. But they'll come back to that. And she's more interested in what happened between him and Lala, right? The following events take place on September 7th, 1505, Imperial Year, in the castle of the governor of Nibelheim. Dantalian woke up early in the morning. I don't understand why it's so noisy from the very morning. Lala was lying next to him. She replied that it was not morning anymore, and she received a letter from Ivar. The built-in girl slowly got out of bed and went to change. Dantalian asked what was written in that letter. The girl replied that the quality of the information was good. There are 13 captive markets in the kingdom of Sardinia, 4 of which are used by aristocrats. The slave that Dantalian is looking for was spotted at the Papia market. Our hero replied that everything was clear to him. Lala said the name Laura de Parn, the child of the Marquis of Parnes and a servant. From birth, she was a stranger to everyone. For many years, she was kept in a dungeon, and the very fact of her existence was hidden. She did not have the happiest childhood. Lala asked our hero why he was interested in a human child. Dantalian looked at her with a smile and asked, "Is she jealous?" And his interlocutor answered that she simply did not expect that His Highness would be interested in little girls. Dantalian asked her what she had imagined there. She certainly didn't think about what he meant, and let her not think that he was attracted to small children. Dantalian slapped himself in the face and said that he was really interested in this girl because she might have what they needed. Laura hates children more than anyone. They need to find the girl. Lala said that Laura hates people, but why? Dantalian said that she should put herself in her place. Her family denied her existence. She spent her entire life in prison and suffered constant abuse and contempt. And after the fall of the House of Parnes, she became a slave. And what does Lala think? What does that girl dream about? Our hero said that she should imagine this situation, but Lala frowned, and our hero told her that she could definitely understand it. The answer is simple. She wants to take revenge on all the people in this world for the fact that she had to endure all that pain. Dantalian said that a person like her was always needed. Lala did not quite understand what he was talking about. She stood silently and looked at our hero, and Dantalian asked her, had he really enchanted her? Lala replied that she was sure that Dantalian simply wanted to get a slave for his pleasures with noble blood. Dantalian shouted that he had never thought about such a thing in his life, and why did she think such a thing about him? Lala said that it was a pity, because she had hoped that that girl would take the time from her to satisfy Dantalian's needs. Our hero felt a little ashamed and asked if she didn't like sleeping with him, since she was the one who climbed on him first. Lala replied that at that moment she did not yet know about the master's endurance. It takes too much time and effort. She told him that it was hard for her to work because she spent too much time and energy in bed. Dantalian thought that over all these years he had accumulated some energy. Someone interrupted their conversation and called His Highness, saying that dinner was ready. Several maids entered the room and brought food, and Dantalian thanked them. The maids raised their eyes a little to see what was going on here, and they felt a little uncomfortable. They said that they were asking for forgiveness for interrupting them and began to leave. Dantalian said that he himself told them to come in. Let them do what they came for. They bowed their heads before him and said that everything would be done. Then they began to smooth out the food on the table. While they were smoothing out the food, they looked in surprise at how their master was talking about something with Lala. His bride got dressed, and our hero was still lying in bed. The maids said that they had prepared everything. The girls wanted to leave, but our hero told them to stop. Everyone should stay in their places. Dantalian heard something like a sound of displeasure and asked, "Who did it?" The maids began to panic. They said that they did not understand what Dantalian was talking about. Our hero got out of bed and said that it looked like they decided to pretend that they were fools, and he knew exactly what he heard. One of them clicked his tongue and he walked up to one of the girls and asked if she did it. And why did she do it? The girl began to ask for forgiveness. Dantalion came very close to her and asked in an ominous voice why did she click her tongue. The maid was horrified that she had just incurred the Lord's wrath, but suddenly he said that he knew that she hadn't made that sound towards Dantalion. It was Lala, right? He asked her, does she really think that a half-breed who is lower in rank than him is unworthy of being with the Demon King? The girl said that she was sincerely sorry. Our hero approached the table and took a knife, saying that first of all, Lapis is his bride, and therefore, if his maids despise his beloved, they will be very unlucky. Lala turned to the Demon King and said that she asked him to stop and calm down. Dantalion looked at his beloved and suddenly he thought that he had given in to his emotions again. What was happening to him? Everything was like last time. He thought that she just made a sound of discontent. She has the right to her personal opinion. It is not worth killing her. Dantalion began to try to calm himself down and think clearly, because Lala wouldn't like this either. Then he turned to that servant and asked her if she understood what she had done wrong. Dantalion turned away from her and said that this was enough and they could leave. They said that they were truly sorry and they began to lead their frightened friend away. Dantalion turned to his beloved and said that when it comes to her, he cannot control himself. Our hero noticed that Lapis's level of sympathy towards him had dropped by another 7 points. The girl turned around and started to leave, saying that she would prepare everything necessary for the trip to the slave market. Dantalion said that they could leave right after lunch. But the girl said that she was asking permission to leave, and she began to slowly leave. Dantalion didn't understand why she didn't forgive him for this. What did he do wrong? The following events take place in some desert area. Our hero and his beloved were there, and the witch turned to them and said that they were ready to begin. Dantalion said in a calm voice that she could begin, and the witch smiled and said that she was ready and used her magic called Hermes' equipment. A huge pentagram-shaped symbol appeared above our hero, and the witch told Lapis to move aside a little. And then she unleashed a powerful stream of some kind of magical energy on our hero straight from that portal. Dantalion quickly changed. He no longer looked like a demon, but looked like an ordinary person, and the theme of the day is Mysterious Merchant. Dantalion found that that annoying rock on his head was indeed gone. It was a bit uncomfortable to sleep with, and sometimes it would get caught on things. He liked the way this witch worked, and he told her that it was pretty good. She was great. Now, no one will think that he is the Demon King. Apparently, she turned to our hero and said that there is one detail. He should be careful. After 24 hours of transformation, it will come off, but no. In other words, and the time is limited. Dantalion realized that this was something similar to Cinderella's magic, but this time should be enough for him. He turned to the witch and called her Granny. Again, she was very old compared to him, and told her to gather her sisters and wait for him to give the signal. The witch agreed with him and said that everything would be done. Our hero looked at his beloved, but she stood very dissatisfied and did not even look at him. Dantalion tried to cheer her up somehow and said that sometimes it is useful to change appearance. He asked if she liked his appearance. The pink-haired girl said that before they went deeper into the city, they had to find a guide, and he had to follow her. And then she said that today's matter had to remain a secret. He had to try not to expose his identity as the Demon King. Dantalion answered her that he already understood, and looking at how indifferent she was to him, he turned around and said that it was time to go. Our hero himself thought that it was all because of that time when he became somehow hot-tempered. The relationship with Lala was getting worse and worse. He didn't understand what was going on and why he was having such outbursts of aggression. He couldn't understand it at all. And so Dantalion walked ahead of his beloved, approaching the city that was located in the middle of this desert. The following events take place on September 10th, 1505, according to the imperial calendar in the Kingdom of Sardinia, at the slave market of Babia. There were a lot of slaves there who were shown no mercy. They were treated worse than animals. There were also separate beautiful women there that noble men could buy for their harem. Dantalion and his beloved approached a local goblin and gave him money. He replied that they could trust him. He could show them all of Babia. He asked them if this was their first time there and what kind of slave they wanted to buy. Dantalion looked around everyone and thought about what he needed to think about. He hadn't decided yet and wanted to look at others. The goblin said that there are about 4,000 different slaves in this city. It's a small town, but the goods here are first class. There are almost absolutely all races here, for every color and taste. Here you can even find the rarest specimens. Dantalian said that he couldn't wait to see them all, and he also said that he heard a rumor that the daughter of a fallen aristocrat appeared at the market today. And is it true? The goblin smiled and said that he had expected this. Rumors travel fast. But it was definitely an extraordinary curiosity, and like all rarities, it would be put up for sale at tomorrow's auction. Dantalian smiled and said that his companion knew quite a lot. Goblin said that receiving praise from him was a part for him. It was unlikely that he would be able to buy it. The goblin started to say something but suddenly fell silent. I looked as if I saw someone very important. Dantalian asked the goblin who he was. The goblin replied that the one with the eye patch was the head of the merchants named Pabius, and that man with a black mustache and a white mask is Count Rosell. He plans to buy that very young lady. Dantalian said that he understands why nothing will work out. It looks like her buyer has already been identified. He said it was interesting, but if he wanted to get closer to the working traders like that aristocrat, what would he need to do for that? The goblin replied that it was impossible. Traders do not make friends with everyone. While he was saying this, our hero turned to his beloved, calling her by name, and she immediately gave the goblin another bag of gold. This was able to loosen the tongue of this goblin, and he said that tonight there will be a bell dinner. All the city's traders will be there. Perhaps this information will somehow help our hero. He also started to tell that he would need a bar on the outskirts of the city, a gambling house run by slave traders. I went there and entered this house. It immediately attracted the attention of everyone who was there. He walked up to the bartender and said he needed a glass of wine. At that moment, he heard someone shout that he had lost again. Dantalian recalled that while talking to the goblin, he said that he wanted to know the name of the slave trader who owned that young lady. The goblin replied that it would be a young guy named Giacomo, who was just there playing cards with the other guys. Our hero quickly found him and was about to approach him to talk. He still had some time before he turned back into a demon. The men who were playing cards said that Giacomo was very active today. And is everything okay with him? What is he like? The young guy was drinking beer and offered to play. After some time, one of the men won, and today, all the money will go to him. The young guy didn't understand how he lost again. He got upset and the other guys started to support him, saying that sometimes this happens, there's no need to be sad. He got the girl from the Paris house after all. They said that they could earn quite a lot of money for her, and they even envied him, because that count would definitely buy her out. The people who surrounded that young guy said that the count would definitely not be greedy, and he is also known for his love. Having become his slave, cheetah girl will live happily. But that guy clearly didn't want to listen to that. It was as if he was uncomfortable with those words. Some said that they would like to try such a beauty at least once. The young guy said that they should stop talking about this topic because she is not what they think. One of those guys said that the guy very rarely objects to them. Is he really that attached to that product? The young man replied that of course not, and that they should continue playing. One of the men was hiding cards under the table, and he was clearly not playing fairly. He said that they had the whole night ahead of them. He himself thought that now it was his turn and let this little boy pay. They were both slave traders, but you can't be kind here. Our hero intervened in their conversation and said that it looked very interesting. And suddenly he plunged a knife into the hand of the man who played unfairly. Dantalian said that it was disgusting. Everyone who was sitting there was very scared by this turn of events. The man whose hand just now, Brazil with a knife, screamed loudly from pain and surprise. Dantalian said in an absolutely calm voice that he was a real slave trader. He didn't even think about perceiving people as equals. He looked him in the eyes and asked if he cheated. The man with the knife in his hand screamed loudly. Dantalian abruptly pulled his hand along with the knife out of the table and asked the young guy who was sitting next to him if he was Giacomo. It seems that this man had fooled him, and the young guy was very surprised that he had been deceived. Dantalian said that it was probably not worth talking about it now. Our hero also said that the guy is not sure whether to sell Laura to Count Rosell. The young man was very surprised. After all, no one knew the name of that girl. Dantalian replied that they could discuss this later, since he had little time, and he was not interested in Laura becoming a slave. Giacomo doesn't want this either. The man who was stabbed in the arm shouted that her buyer had already been identified, and the guy would be crazy if he let her escape. Doesn't he know what happens to traders who break the rules? Dantalian turned to Giacomo and said that it was time to choose. The choice was his alone. At that moment, the merchant Giacomo's sympathy level towards our hero increased by 10 points. He looked at the wounded slave trader and said that it was he who brought her here, and it was up to him to decide what to do with her. Then they went to a quiet place in the field, and our hero brought some drinks so that the guy would calm down a little. At first glance, Giacomo thought that our hero was kind of scary, but then he realized that he was not so bad, and his sympathy level increased again by 20 points. Dantalian turned to the guy and asked if he could tell him more about her, because he felt that they were with him. That's what they drank too. Dantalian told the young man that he travels and frees captive slaves, and he also plans to one day completely eradicate slavery in this world. And to do this, he first needed to find someone like Giacomo, someone who would support him, and he was looking for him, not Laura. The guy's sympathy level increased again towards our hero by another 10 points. He said that he didn't really want to become a slave trader, but his father was in debt, and there was no other work to be found in this city. Then he bowed before our hero and said that he asked him to help her escape. Dantalian asked him, why does he want her to escape so much? The guy replied that she wouldn't be human here, but only he knew what she really was like. He dropped the bottle and said that it looked like he had drunk a lot. Dantalian thought that it seemed like the sleeping pill had worked. He approached the guy and said that he understood his feelings, and he thought that only he could take care of her. And again the merchant's sympathy level increased towards our hero by another 10 points. Dantalian asked the young man if he would tell him where she was, and the boy replied that she was now in that very far cage and pointed there with his finger. Dantalian turned to the guy and told him not to worry because he would free her. But the guy had already begun to lose consciousness. Before he almost lost consciousness, his sympathy level towards our hero increased by another 20 points. Dantalian thought about how he had never been able to increase someone else's sympathy so easily before. He is too trusting. And that is why everyone is fooling this guy, but respects his feelings. He gave him his word that Laura would be happy. He put the guy down and went to her. He no longer had time left, and he turned into a demon again just at the moment when he approached the cage with the girl he needed. He introduced himself and said that his name was Dantalian and he was the 71st Demon King. He told the girl who was reading something that he had come for her, but she said in an absolutely calm voice that she doesn't know who he is. Well, let him not block her moonlight because she's reading. With the help of her system, our hero knew that she, as the main character, had the power to change the world. But there is only one difference. She brings me hope and despair, and in the future, if nothing is done, she can destroy this world. The protagonist in this world represents the Gatberg Empire, and Laura represents the Bruton Kingdom. These two empires started the Great War for the state on the continent, which lasted for many years. In that war, Laura killed more people than all the kings put together. In a way, she is the main threat to the protagonist, not the Demon King, but that will only happen in 20 years or so. Today's Laura is nothing more than a 16-year-old girl, which is why he must train her now. Our hero said that he has enough money to beat any bid at the auction. In addition, there are witches near the market who are just waiting for his order. In extreme cases, he can simply steal her. He wants to show respect for her feelings and he needs a subordinate like her. The girl replied that she did not want to be subordinate, and she did not. Dantalian told her that everything was correct. If she needed a slave, he would have used money or force. But he did not do this. If she doubted, she could test him, check whether he was worthy of becoming her master. She turned to the Demon King and said that she was grateful for his offer, but her fate was well known to her. She thought that tomorrow she would be bought. It would be Count Roselle from the Kingdom of Bruton. He collects noble maidens with the purpose of torturing them. Dantalian said that first there would be torture with wax, and then they would roast her with soot, and then it would get even worse, until it came to amputation of limbs. The girl said that she could still withstand wax and fire, but she would not want to lose an arm or a leg. That would make it harder to read. Dantalian asked her if she was only interested in reading, and she was surprisingly calm. The girl replied that she didn't need to be praised. She already understood at the age of 6 that she was a genius. Dantalian replied that it was a big coincidence, because he also understood that he was a genius at that age. The girl replied that she realized this very clearly when she saw that at 10 years old, neither her brothers nor her sisters understood anything about geometry. But she understood absolutely everything. And she also noticed that her 5-year-old sister could not learn at least 2 foreign languages. Every time she sees people who can't understand simple truths, she feels sorry for them. How do they even live with such a tiny brain? In their place, she would simply commit suicide. Dantalian replied that there was nothing to be done. Most people were pathetic creatures, and people like them could only lead them in the right direction. The girl asked the role of the demons. Isn't it too tiring? Dantalian replied that it was indeed tiring, but they were still part of this world, and sometimes one had to sacrifice something for the sake of the great goal. The girl asked, is it possible to sacrifice just once? Dantalian answered her that this was quite enough and he knew that they would get along. The girl stood up and said that it was a big coincidence because she thought so too. Dantalian. I said that then let him tell him who else I have in this world, and the girl answered that of course it was her. Dantalian asked her how she would deal with an irresponsible person who ignores everyone except himself. The girl replied that she would immediately cut off his hands and hang them on the nearest branch. Dantalian asked the girl how she felt about innocent people. The girl replied that she does not understand how they can live in their stupid world. Their frequency is so blinding that it seems to her as if they are not people at all. Dantalian asked her what she thought about friendship. The girl replied that it was something she would only give to those who would not stand in her way. Dantalian asked her what she thought about love. The girl replied that it was a beautiful path to destruction, suicide. Dantalian replied that both the answers were ideal, and he noticed that Laura's level of sympathy towards him had increased by 30 points. Our hero freed the girl and asked her how she felt about this feeling of freedom. The girl answered him that it was quite convenient. Then our hero said that he wanted her to accept the first gift from him. He opened some sheet of paper, and at that very moment a ray of light appeared from there and witches began to fly towards this light. The girl was surprised by this turn of events. The witches just started attacking this city and burning all the houses around. Dantalian told Laura to watch carefully. Today this city will be cleansed. Everything around was burning, but the slaves were enchanted and they stood in place like pawns. Everything was on fire, and people didn't understand what was happening here. We needed to put out the fire quickly, but suddenly the slaves began to attack those who brought them here and killed them. Lapis, meanwhile, was also near one man, the same Rosal who was wearing a white mask. She wounded him. He tried to threaten her, saying that he wouldn't get away with it here, but when he saw that she had a sword in her hand, he began to say that he understood everything and that she should calm down. What does she want? He was ready to pay her as much as she asked, begged her to leave him alive. If she needed money, then he could buy his life. While all this was happening, the young guy woke up and saw that everything around him was burning. He had absolutely no idea what was happening and was shocked by this turn of events. He wanted slavery, and he remembered how he talked to that man who told him to take courage. He would succeed. Well, where is Laura now? He thought that he had to save her and looked around, not understanding where he should go now. The witches cast a real curse on this city. Everything around was burning and the enchanted slaves were killing the slave owners. There was real chaos there. Dantalian asked the girl if she could hear the dying cries of her tormentors. And then he said that from this moment her completely new life begins, and this prelude is dedicated to her. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked this manhwa and would like to see the application, then be sure to like and write comments that you want to see a continuation. If I see good activity in the form of comments and likes, and we also get 500,000 views on this video, then I will definitely make a second part. So watch the video until the end and share with your friends. Also subscribe to this channel and click on the bell so as not to miss new videos. You can watch other videos on my channel. See you later.